we're good
If
to
you
go.
trip and break your neck, I will never forgive you. Just so you know.
We're
All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Police Commission Biennial Work Retreats to develop our work plan for fiscal years 26 and 27. I am Chair Jensina Hawkins, and we have quorum, so we will start the meeting. We have the agenda that has been put together for us. If there's no strenuous objections, we will proceed with that as planned. We have an update. Vice Chair Shivers and I went and met with the mayor and the city manager along with Holly to provide our quarterly update. It was our first time meeting with the mayor in this capacity for this year. She was very engaged, inquisitive, and supportive. It was very nice actually also having city manager Maderi providing a lot of the historical background of some of the decisions with Police Commission. During that meeting, we had a conversation about the recommendation subcommittee. Previously, Police Commission has reviewed the applications that come in for vacancies on the Police Commission. Per the city manager and the mayor, the Police Commission is the only one of the 26 boards and commissions that was doing it that way, and that the city charter actually does not allow for that accommodation to be made. So the next time we review our bylaws, we will need to edit our bylaws to align more closely with the city charter on that. What that means is that Police Commission is not invited to form a subcommittee and make recommendations to the mayor this time. Speaking of recruiting status, we have 4 vacancies. We lost Commissioner Thorson, Commissioner Price, Commissioner Parham, and Dr. Booker as our liaison from Human Rights Commission. So the city has been notified of these vacancies, and hopefully with July, we will have folks to fill those seats. There will be some community engagement opportunities. A lot of them will come into some of the background that Vice Chair Shivers will be providing in a little bit. But we will be as we go into the summer, keep an ear open for invitations to table at a booth at Asian Celebration, Pride in the Park, all sorts of different things that go on during the summer. And there will be a lot of work that we have. Our charter from City Council says that we are to obviously work on recommending policy to the chief, but also to liaise with the community. And so we have an excellent opportunity and a platform to do that in the next couple of years. Holly, do we have anybody for public comment this evening?
We do not.
All right, I will take 10 minutes back in my agenda and move into commissioners' opening comments. So I decided for opening comments, we will go in alphabetical order, and then for closing comments, we will go in reverse alphabetical order. And yes, I did actually have to sing the ABCs to myself when I listed them out on my agenda. That means we begin with this evening with Commissioner Folks.
Good evening. So Jensina and I just completed Eugene Citizens Police Academy, which is super cool. If you get a chance, if you have any thoughts or no knowledge at all, I really had no knowledge at all of the entirety of what EPD does in the different departments and all of those. So you all out there, if you have any desire to learn, I highly recommend it. If you're curious in the slightest, even when they offer it again, it's an amazing experience and really insightful to the culture, to the procedures, a little bit of the policy around EPD and what they do. So thank you for offering that. And those are all the comments I have to see.
Commissioner Folks actually shot Officer Peckles.
Okay.
I was very, very impressed because during our defensive tactics scenario, when we were practicing pulling a gun out of a holster on the belt, she actually managed to inflict just a tiny little bit of damage on Officer Peckles, and he certainly milked it a little bit and made it seem very, very dramatic. But it was actually an excellent opportunity, and I agree with Commissioner Folks. It could not have been a better presentation and everything that we learned from that. Commissioner Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Chair. It's good to be here. I look forward to hearing what everybody has to say as we go into the work, and it'll be very interesting seeing what we all come up with. But ready to get going.
All right, I guess that puts me next in the alphabet. So Commissioner Folks took pretty much everything I was going to say. The Citizens Police Academy, on the recommendation of Commissioner Rady, I was champing at the bit to do it, and it was absolutely everything and a bag of chips. It was really amazing, and I wish that I had the power and that we all had the resources and the time to make it mandatory for every single police commissioner to participate in it, because it was that insightful. That is all the opening comments I have this evening. Commissioner Lyman.
Thank you, Chair. Sitting here just kind of disappointed, wondering a little bit if any outreach was done with Commissioner Parham. Everyone has their reasons and personal reasons, but we've lost 2 people of color in the last like 5 minutes, it seems like, and we're coming into a planning session, and that's disappointing personally for me that, you know, but that's what it is. I just hope, you know, and I hope that as we look to recruit that we are mindful of that, even if we'll lose all of our funding and everything. I would, that's my 2 cents. And like Counselor, I look forward to working with all of you this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you for that. There has been outreach to Commissioner Parham. I believe they will join us for public comment for the June meeting. They do have some statements to make to the commission as a body.
Yeah, well, so just that, you know, I just wish that engagement could have been before the departure of the commission. You know, there was obviously some recent tensions and stuff, and that's a fail. You know, I think for all of us, I should have reached out to them. So anyway, thank you. Sorry to.
Yes, I share your sorrow to watch that departure happen. Commissioner Neal, I just realized I did not build in time for the liaison report, so please take all the time you want.
Well, what's neat about that is that we have not met as a body, the CRB has not met since the last police commission meeting, so.
Well, then you can't have any time.
Yeah, we can check. But in terms of opening conference, it would to my first annual meeting. So learning a little bit and listening and hoping to learn.
I think actually, except for Vice Chair Shivers and Councillor Ye, Commissioner Lyman, and myself, this is the first biennial work retreat for the rest of them. I've only been through one of them myself, so I'm counting, leaning very heavily on Vice Chair Shivers to tell me what the heck to do. Commissioner Rady.
Yeah, regarding the unfortunate resignation of Commissioner Parham, I'm afraid I probably had something to do with that, and I do not feel great about that. I did reach out to him with our because he had served on the subcommittee for a while, even though he had resigned from it. I sent him our package and material that Sergeant Jordan had worked up and asked him for his input, because I figured he would note and have something to pass on, but I didn't get a response. Otherwise, there's a lot of things happening in the world that seem to be accelerating that may come to our attention. Even if we put something on our planning for the next 2 years, it may come up very rapidly, and I hope we will be able, even though our responses will be in terms of policy recommendations, we may, I feel, need to recommend some rather significant policy fairly soon. And I hope we will have a way to do that. That's basically all I have.
Commissioner Folks, I saw your hand.
I just wanted to politely recommend that we use pronouns that fit the individual. And
Oh,
so
Did I mess that up?
I believe
Right,
refers they them. Thank
They,
you.
them, mixture.
Thank you, Amelia. Vice Chair Shivers.
Yeah, I'm sorry I never got a chance to talk with Parham. It's disappointing to see him go, and I look forward to the work we do today. Wish they were good contributors.
Councillor Ye.
I don't really have much to add. I'm just looking forward to our discussion today.
All right. And with all of the extra time that we get back in the first half of this meeting, I do plan to roll that into the working time of our evening. But we will go into an icebreaker activity, and I've asked Commissioner Folks to lead us in an icebreaker activity.
Thank you so much, Chair. I thought a lot about this one and had way too many ideas. So we're gonna stick with simple. So what is just a fun fact about you that nobody knows about? I'm happy to go first or let somebody else take it, however.
Sure, we can start with you and go around the table.
Beautiful. I had an opportunity in my twenties. I had a quarter life crisis. I lost some jobs. I had two nonprofit jobs. I lost both of them in the span of 6 months and didn't have much of a plan. I was about 25 and I didn't know what I was doing with my life. And so a girlfriend said, "Hey, I'm going to work at Yellowstone for the summer. You want to come?" And I said, "Hey, why not?" So I picked up, I packed my car and I went and lived at Yellowstone for 3 months and had one of the most amazing times. And to add a little police fun into that, the very first day we got there, there was a store. So the park hadn't opened to the public yet. And there was a market just a little bit down the ways. And so the back roads of where we were, I was thinking, well, I don't need my license or anything. We're just hopping over. We got pulled over by the federal folk who escorted us to our dorm so he could see my license. So that was a learning lesson.
Cool. Just want to go clockwise.
Let me think of the clock. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that sounds great, Vice Chair.
Some folks know me a little bit better than others. So I'll start with something really esoteric, which is I play tabletop role-playing games. I'm currently running one about vampires. So
How do you win at that?
you tell a good story. There's no winning and losing. There's just good stories.
That's all you do is you just tell stories.
Well, yeah, I've created a cork board with the various the non-player characters and attach strings to them based on the relationships in the game. So like you can add stuff to it, but it's not
All right, then.
necessary to have fun.
Okay. Clay.
Let's see, maybe the most embarrassing, but also like easy to talk about thing is that I'm currently singing in a queer a cappella group, which has a performance in June. Kind of random, but I've been a singer all my life and a friend who leads that group. Invited me to join this one little thing, so I can do it.
Are you good?
I'll leave that to the people in the audience. If you want to come, it's like June 14th at the Wildish Theater.
Awesome. Congratulations. Alan.
I grew up in Manhattan in New York City, and when I was 19, I went and worked on the fishing vessel Courageous in Dutch Harbor, Alaska, fished king crab in Dutch Harbor. I was the only kid from Manhattan there, so, and I survived.
Did that make you a crab snob,
It
seafood
made me a
snob?
really good public defender years later in Miami when I'd be locked in a jail cell with someone and I didn't have like really great news and it was not going to be a really good conversation and it just was what it was. And you could channel that boat energy about whatever words you could think of. That's what and so that it served me well. I got respect, but I got some street cred. Because
All right.
Before that, I apparently had no game.
Okay.
It was a useful endeavor and it wasn't necessarily fun, but it was useful.
And in your next career path, are you gonna be, we're gonna see you on Deadliest Catch?
No, I watched for a minute of trauma and recharge. And, but yeah, no, it's real. That's what it's like.
Okay. Jennifer.
Opposite of street cred. I was once in a member of a semi-professional English handbell choir, which I feel like is the opposite of street cred. Yeah, when I was in college.
That's cool.
I think you and I can share the opposite of street credit and credit.
All right, Fire Chief, let's.
Silver bells. I mean, did you do like Britney Spears?
Oh, no.
Okay.
but not, but like other kinds of,
Okay.
mostly classic.
Do people call you a ding-a-ling?
Probably.
Randy?
I have no musical skills. I can barely play the radio. But I guess something that probably most people don't know about me, I used to be a river guide and spent many years running whitewater rivers. And in 1989, and then again in 1990, I had the opportunity to run the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. Those are 21-day trips. I went into it thinking about the big water, and I left with what I would consider life-changing experiences. You get to see the oldest exposed rock in the world, Vishnu Shish. You get to see the Anasazi granaries, where you can see thumbprints in the mud chink that's 600 to 800 years old. It really puts perspective. I was in my 20s at the time. Puts perspective on your life and really how insignificant our time is here on the planet, and how important it is to try and make a difference while we're here. And anyway, that's my point. It had a profound impact on my life, and I still think about it frequently. Look at my pictures. You're probably the only one who knows about that. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, that offers me a great segue, because the Grand Canyon had a deep effect on my life as well. I spontaneously got married on the North Rim 26 years ago. We were traveling out to Oklahoma to a blues festival from Eugene, having just moved here, and the car broke down, had to be repaired. And well, when we were waiting for it to be repaired, my friend pointed out that, Zion's there and Bryce is there and the North Rim of the Grand Canyon is there. And I always wanted to have my honeymoon on the North Rim of the Grand Canyon. And we went and found a cabin by accident. Somebody canceled, and it was just, everything was going like that. And we went out the next day to the Valhalla Outlook, the tongue that sticks out of the canyon. And as we pulled into the parking lot, there was a sign that says, "Viewing area and wedding spot." And my wife said, when the universe gives me a sign, I always like it to be in big letters, easy to read. So we walked out there, looked out the canyon. I said, "Do you?" And we said vows right there that we made up on the spot. And it's affected my life ever since. So.
Okay, then. Look at you taking a hint. That was amazing.
Oh, I'm good on picking up on straight.
Very nice. It helps when it's in print right in front of your eyes.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Okay. Well, not very many people know that I have been bitten by a lion. And so I wish that it involved like a safari and guards with rifles and things like that. But it was actually down at the abandoned game park with one of the little lion cubs. But it actually did bite me right on the stomach, and I have a tiny little scar. And so I do actually get a kick out of telling people that's from where I got bit by a lion.
I thought it was gonna be from feeding the wildlife in your backyard.
No, I haven't gotten a mountain lion yet. I'm trying really hard.
What did you do to the lion?
A lady never tells.
Oh.
Oh, and I am not scared of spiders or any kind of bugs, but I am terrified of banana slugs. Absolutely petrified of those things. They are slimy. They stare at you. They follow you. They are snails that don't have the decency to wear clothes. They are just nasty, horrible things. And yeah, the way that a lot of people scream about spiders, that's how I am with banana slugs. I don't hike in the Pacific Northwest. Oh, okay. Oh, Holly.
I was hoping you just.
Gotta do this.
Something different about me. So I'm a single mom, and my son is 15, and he loves monster trucks. I mean, loves monster trucks. And so the past couple years, we've been on this mission to go to every show that's in the Pacific Northwest. We've been to Seattle, Tacoma, Cottage Grove. I mean, all over. And I've come to like monster trucks too. They're actually really cool. So that's been a lot of fun.
I want to see you rocking a mohawk.
I know.
And some
right?
oh my gosh, that's amazing. And Aiden is so blessed to have a mom that just jumps right on board with something like that. We Do have actually public comment this evening. Athena, please come to the table if you would like, if you want, go ahead and have a seat here by Holly. And you joined us in April, didn't you? Excellent.
So what happened? You guys went on a retreat last time? The last month?
Well, that was a regular police commission meeting.
could've
This
gone.
is the work retreat.
So this is,
Hmm.
oh, anyways.
No, you
So
have perfect
basically,
timing.
What I want to say now is that, when you like go to make a report with the police, if it's like certain things, you can go onto the online reporting thing and make the report there. Otherwise, or this is, and the first thing that I did was like Google how to make a police report and like go to the police website and stuff. And I couldn't really find, I felt that I couldn't figure out what to do. And that if I called and said, how do I make a report? That person would like high key pressure me into making the report then, right there that day, which I don't know if that would have happened, but I was really afraid. So, and I felt like I couldn't come into the police station because the last time that I tried to make the report at a different municipality, when I went into the police station, the police officer was very threatening. So I was like, I can't go to the police station because they're gonna be really mean to me, and I can't call them because they're gonna be really mean to me. Which maybe those weren't true, but I really felt that way. So I went to like victim advocacy people and was like, how do you make a police report without them like harming you? And they were like, oh, you can come here and have them come here. Like we'll call them and stuff like that. And then they can come here. I was like, that's cool. There's other options. But it still felt like, that to me still felt like there weren't very many options, basically. I still felt that I had been forced into that as the only option because I couldn't make, because in the online reporting system, it's only for like theft, vandalism. If there's like a limited crimes on that thing, on the online thing. And so when I actually initially, one of the things that happened is that I went on there, because one of them is harassment. And I was like, well, you get harassed. So I could put a harassment thing in there and just like, it was pretty clear that that's not what it was for. And I was like, I'm just going to put it in there to get the report. The reason, by the way, I was originally getting the report is because in order to access some other victim services, I needed to like, they want you to have evidence. And there was other things I could have figured out, but the police report is like a golden ticket for victim services. For like, and it's not, and part of it is that it was like a multi-state thing where, and it was very complicated. But so I felt that I needed a report. And I was like, okay, so it should be online because to access most victim service, to me, I viewed the police report as another victim service because the act gives you access to the criminal court. So I was like, I probably will be able to do the report online. I was actually really surprised that it wasn't like you couldn't report any crime online. So I think that one of the things that you maybe could do is expand the online reporting to include more crimes or be more, because I think that this could be a form, because most of the time, like when I made a report to Title IX, I made reports to different Title IXs and at schools, and you could do it online or in person. And they had created a form where they had all of the details that you needed to write on there. So I feel that you guys could also do that. And the victim service, which I don't even know if this is true because I was getting this information from a victim advocate. But the victim advocate told me like, no, they require you to be in person because it's like person-to-person violence. And, which I don't know if that was true from you guys at all. But because sometimes they give you wrong information because they don't know what's going on either because the policies change and they're not always updated. But I was like, well, that kind of sucks because, I was like, I told the victim advocate, which one of the things I wrote down here was like, which I wouldn't have done this probably, but like, could I have a police officer call me and then I make the report over the phone? Because I had no, like, this is like 14 months later. There was nothing to collect physically. So it kind of was like weird to me that I had to be in person. And part of the issue was that the last time when I was in a different municipality, the police officer was like threatening in regards to like his uniform and weaponry or whatever. And I was like, if it was on, which I probably wouldn't have done on the phone anyways, but if it was on the phone, then they couldn't shoot me or like pull a gun on me because it would be over the phone. So that could potentially be an option for reporting. I don't know if that's like against state or federal things, but that's one other idea I've had. I'm just trying to throw out ideas so that people can feel like they have options. Because another thing is I talked to other people out after the meeting to like that are just like people, random citizens of Eugene, and was like, yeah, making a police report like sucks when it's about rape. And they're like, yeah, they give you like no options. Like there's no options in general. So I just feel like even if it was kind of, one of the things that I've noticed victim advocates do is even they don't have very many options to offer. They'll kind of like make it seem like they do. You know what I mean? Like you have options. Like, oh, you could, when I was going to them to ask about getting a restraining order, they were like, well, you could get that order or you could get the order later. or you could decide to never get the order, or you could just like make a report and not, you know what I mean? Even though they don't have very many things to offer me, they kind of made it seem like it was, which I didn't feel like the cops really, like they were like, this is what happens next in the procedure. So this is what we're gonna do next, which makes sense. And that's probably the training they received, but they weren't trying to make it seem like, they weren't asking me like, do you want us to arrest him? That's like their discretion. You know what I mean? I don't know. I know that that's something that like I know that there's all these regulations that are outside of this body's control, but I think there are things that are within the police commission's control, like those things I mentioned. Other ideas I've had is which I told the advocate this, like, why can't you just take your report and then you give the report to them? And they were like, that's not how it works. They won't let us do that. And afterwards, I was thinking to myself, like, they get all sorts of certifications for other things. Like they get a certificate, like when I went to do address confidentiality, they have a person in Eugene that is certified, so I don't have to go to Salem, which makes a lot of sense. But this also will make sense for people like emotionally to be able to go to SAS. And like, if there was some kind of certification they could get through the police department, they probably would do that because they get certifications through other like state agencies and stuff to make it easier for victims. They want to get certifications to make things easier for victims. So if that's a possibility where they could go through like the part of police training that allows you to take reports, like Hope and Safety Alliance or SAS or whatever it may be. That could be a way to do it. Another thing is that I was like, well, if I don't even know if this is possible, but like, if that's impossible because of state regulations or some kind of regulation, then there could be like a designated officer that gets training from SAS, like extra training, or SAS picks someone from the community and you guys train them up as a police officer and then they go work at SAS or something like that. I don't know how the funding would work between all of this, but even just having in the police department, one of the things I kept looking for when I was like Googling stuff is like, is there someone I can just call to ask for information from the police department that I know is not going to be like an asshole and is going to be like a person who understands what I'm trying to say? Because I like the average police officer, part of the issue with me was the average police officer is probably not, I mean, they're not like an asshole like explicitly, but they're probably not going to be like really knowing a lot about this or what's going on or anything like that. They're just going to be a random cop, which is what happened. And I knew that was going to happen, but it was like I couldn't even like I even like went to the and like Facebook stalked the Eugene Police Department and like to see what, just so I would like see people's faces, because this is going to be like an important, like that person is now forever like an important person in my life that I made a police report to. And it was like a randomly assigned person, even though I waited many months and prepared. Like I came with paper. Do you know what I mean? I had like waited many months because I understood that it was going to be potentially like they were going to say stupid things or whatever, or like ask me dumb questions, which they did. And that's what, like the things in the procedure are dumb questions, which I know it doesn't seem like it, but they are. And I know it's for evidence collection or whatever, and there's state regulations. But like, if it was like when I got assigned a detective in Iowa, the person was like an intimate partner violence specialist or something like that. And I feel like that was like, because even though that was still bad because like other police things, but it was like clear that that person understood stuff like what to say or something like that. And I was like, I want to be able, initially when I was Googling stuff, I was like, I want to be able to call someone in the police department called sexual assault officer specialist or something, or you know what I mean? I like looked on like that procedure and stuff and there was no phone number or anything. I was like, I could just call like the police, just like the general number. And then I'm going to get some dispatcher that's going to be like, so do you want us to send it? I imagine this what was going to happen. I don't know what would have happened. I was going to call and be like, can you guys tell me information about what if this the first process is? And they would probably have been like, in my head, they would have said, do you want me to send an officer? And that's going to be a random, right? Yeah, sorry. Am I taking long?
No worries. We take submissions for membership on the commission.
I want to be a part of it.
You should go online and see if you can sign up. I don't know if we've got them open right now or if it's going to take a while.
Was it okay? It was like the
But-
January through March like application thing, right?
Yeah.
And there was like a bunch of things listed. I went to this and there was all these like committees and stuff listed, and police commission wasn't on the list. So I was like, this must not be the way you can be a part of this.
Yeah, it
So
was
we're
missing
gonna have
from
to
the
do that.
webpage for some of the options.
We'll have one soon.
Okay. Well, I'm like just throwing out ideas because I don't know what of these are gonna like hook you guys. I just want there to be like at least one additional option to what there is currently.
Yeah.
And these are just a bunch of ideas that because I started looking for these. That's how I thought of these. Like the first thing I did was like go to the online reporting thing and try to figure out how to report on them. Then the next thing you know what I mean? These are the steps I took and none of these were allowed or available or something like that. And I was like, I can think of these. How can whoever's in charge of the police policy not be able to think of these and create these? You know what I mean?
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I think
Oh,
we'll
wait, oh, sorry.
get to work on putting that on the work.
Yeah. And then one other thing that was an idea I had was I was like, even if when I was like Facebook stalking people, I already selected like, oh, if I could just have that cop. And like, but I was like, there's no way to contact them. There's no staff director or anything like that. I don't know how to like make this happen. And I think I told the victim advocate, like, can I just make an appointment? Like, I'm gonna have to wait because there's been all these cuts to the police tomorrow and I'm aware, and like there's wait times anyways. So can I make an appointment with an officer? Or even like the thing that I optimally wanted from that was like there be a specialist. This is the optimal, which it doesn't have to be like this. And then I can call them and get information and then later make an appointment with them whenever they're working. Because it was very flexible. This was not like, that's why I was saying you need to like split this procedure, because that really made it seem like it was like an immediate response thing. Like, no, I just need this to happen in the next like 3 months. Do you know what I mean? It was a very flexible thing. That's why I'm saying that a lot of these things could have happened that were like not just calling a cop and then coming to your house and then like your dad's on the porch and just, it would have been weird to just call a cop. You know what I mean? For me, I would have rather like, and I didn't want to come into the police department because I felt like I was going to get attacked by an officer, which I think is not I at first I was like, wow, this must be a terrible situation I'm in. I don't think these are unique things. Like the things I'm talking about and describing to you guys are very common. People are like very afraid commonly, you know what I mean? And a lot of people who have worse situations than me would just like never even think to come to the cops, and when they encounter a victim service that they can't get without a police report, they're just like, I just don't get that. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing this. We actually took the recommendations that you submitted to us via email, and they are on the list of policies that we'll be considering for our review in the next biennial work plan. The ones that you had listed out for us with domestic violence and restraining orders, sexual assault, stalking incidents, violent crimes, and sexual assault response team notification are on the list of the policies that we'll be selecting to, well, for the list of policies from which we will be selecting for our work plan. And you coming to the meetings absolutely is very helpful and bringing this to our attention in such a timely fashion. I will say that I've let you go on longer than the 3 months we would normally allow, but the reason for that is because I too have filed a sexual assault report with EPD and it's not fun whatsoever. And so I am fully in support as the police commission chair and as a woman who's also been in that situation. I'm fully in support of the ideas that you're bringing to the table and anything that we can do to help EPD. Part of what we do is present the perception of the community to EPD. We recommend policy to Chief Skinner, but also present that perception that the community has of the officers when they're responding to calls like that. And so you bringing that first person narrative to it is actually very powerful. So thank you very much for coming and presenting that to us. And your policy recommendations certainly made it onto our long list, and tonight we'll be working on the short list.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you very much, Athena.
Go back over there.
Next on the agenda, I wanted to take some time to recognize the EPD staff that have supported us over the last 2 years, supported us, provided snacks, trained us, educated us, humored us in many situations. Obviously, Chief Skinner and Deputy Chief Adams have been absolutely our strongest champions all the way through. Lieutenant Burke in his acting and capacity when he was the AIC chief. We can never say enough things about Holly and Jeremy for the short, brief time that we had Jeremy. The minutes recorders, I know that we have sometimes differences with how the narrative is presented. And so that is certainly something, it's a work in progress that we're fine tuning as we go along, but those folks spend a lot of time. I honestly wouldn't want to have their job, especially the part about watching the recording afterwards. Setting up the room this evening, Holly and I were trying to figure out, because our minutes recorder will be watching the Zoom, trying to figure out who's saying what. And as we go through our activities this evening, it will be helpful if by any reason you manage to remember, if you're not facing the owl, or if the owl can't find where you are, if whatever you can do to make it easier for our minutes recorder who will be watching us after the fact and trying to put this all down on paper for us. I know that's asking a lot. and I will be probably the first one to promptly forget it all. Are you trying to shoo the owl away?
Ow.
Okay. The more you talk, the more it loves you. Okay. Sergeants Barong, Jordan, and Macaulay. Obviously, Sergeant Barong, previously Smith, has done the majority of the work with us on policy. And then Sergeant Jordan stepped in, and please tell me she's had that baby by now.
She did. She
Okay.
had her baby girl.
Wonderful.
We grew Saturday. So,
Good.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
took long enough.
Yeah.
Oh, oh my goodness. Okay. And Sergeant Sean Macaulay have all been very, very helpful developing policies with us. Cindy Coleman recently retired, acting in capacity Lieutenant Griffith, as far as internal standards, bringing professional standards, i.e. internal affairs. Officer Clues, Sergeant Tester, Navasha Tester, of course, promoted to sergeant, and Jacob Olberg Fitzgerald, who have represented the union at several of our meetings, have been very helpful in providing a lot of their perspective on things. And then we have a whole bunch of subject matter experts that I could not even begin to try to remember who all we had. The only one that was top of mind for me was Sergeant Williams, Kyle Williams, because he had the really cool drones, and I think he was our most recent one. But I also think in terms of, was it Linda and Larry, the folks that Sergeant Barong had brought in to help us work on the policy for working with individuals with disabilities. EPD has been remarkably supportive of our efforts and our charter from City Council. And so we wanted to put it on record that we appreciate the efforts and the time and the resources that they've devoted to the Police Commission. Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Subcommittee update. That does not get any shorter, no matter how many times I looked at it.
No, just found the page with the report that I wrote, and it's completely different than what I wrote. Very interesting. Nobody told me anything about that. I have written a one-page report on the work of the subcommittee that was to go with our annual report to the City Council. I was under the impression it was in the package. But
Is that page 3?
is it that? That's it. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you. Takes me a while. Have you all had a chance to read it?
I have, but that's because you even I cheated.
So no one has read it. Would be a fair assessment?
I have not.
Okay, thank you. Then in that case, perhaps I should read it aloud. You want that? It just highlights, what page is it on?
3.
Three. There it is. Okay, that's what I wrote. All right, so 2 years ago, we set up the subcommittee. The City Council granted it a 2-year license. Normally, subcommittees are set up for 6 months only. When I came aboard, the subcommittee had been meeting for 1.5 years. And what we have come up with so far would be that law enforcement, being a unique and high-stress occupation that places officers in situations that can have strong and lasting effects on their mental, emotional, and physical state. And historically, law enforcement culture in this country has been resistant to dealing with this fact and its effects. This department has made great strides in dealing with this issue, have come up with a number of procedures and different programs to address the question, but there has not been a united policy putting all this together in one package. And we felt that in the interest of continuity of this, which we think is a very positive development, we wanted it in writing as a policy, because while Chief Skinner has done a great deal to advance this, we don't know who the next chief will be, and we will soon have another one, and there are no guarantees in this life. Sergeant Jordan did a magnificent job on short notice, putting together the outlines, the beginning of the outlines of a policy, which is the following page of 1021. You will find it there. I hope you will read it. I'm not going to go through it right now. It contains essentially the following items. It has all the usual boilerplate language and definitions and the importance of policy. But the main aspects of it will be the wellness programs, which are numerous and varied, from the peer support team, peer support and resiliency team, on-duty exercise, employee assistance program, chaplain program. They're working on getting a comfort dog program, ongoing education, acute stress adaptive protocol, EMDR, all different programs, and each of which will have its own procedures outlined as to how they are used, when they are used, who authorizes their use, and how they are accounted for and reported on. The two major parts of the policy we have not yet developed but are working on involve the question of the qualified mental health professional in the department, how that will be done, and that appears to be advancing in the department, and we hope to get a policy written out to go with it very soon. And the final question, which is how to use administrative leave in situations other than that mandated by state law for an officer-involved shooting. Understanding that getting away from it is one of the best ways to deal with both short-term stress from acute incidents and long-term stress from just the daily grind. We want our officers to be in tip-top mental shape, both because they're human beings, and we want that to be the case, and because they are important employees of the city who we want well taken care of, and because people do not function well if their minds are not functioning well. And that is important for the individuals they contact, for the officers themselves, for the department, and for the city. So we're going to have, with hopefully by sometime this summer, a completed policy statement, which we will bring to the commission for its consideration. Are there any questions?
Counselor?
I don't have a question. I just want to emphasize how important this work really is. The last thing we need is stressed out, unfocused officers doing the kind of work that they need to be doing. And I'm glad that there's still a peer support and resiliency team. That's I know the fire department, that was a game changer when we went to that same model and learned a lot from EPD. And I saw that make a difference where firefighters are willing to talk to other firefighters that had special training when they didn't want to talk with even professionals that deal with us all the time. They wanted somebody that understood what they were going through. And so I still think that's one of the best programs I've seen and been part of.
Any other? Yes, Commissioner Lyman.
Commissioner, you said a policy statement, but attached is this draft policy, and you're saying that a policy is going to.
We're going to bring in a draft for the commission.
Okay, so all right, and so this is just kind of an order point of order kind of comment, though, that the committee's sunsetting. The committee is basically done as far as I understand in terms of just its authorization. 2 more months. Is
2 more meetings, I think.
Okay, and then we've heard from the police that they're picking up the mantle, and it's their policy to bring to us or not bring to us, right? And then for us to weigh in on it. And I have mild concerns about the optics of this. For the past 2 years, there's been such a focus, really important, on the mental health of the officers, but we haven't had a focus on things like working with ICE or the feeding in the park. Like we have spent a lot of time on this at just about every meeting, and and I am perfectly wanting the police to pick up the mantle, have the policy people develop a policy, and for us to pass on it or not. So it's kind of more of just an expression that you haven't been here for the full 2 years. I have. I've listened to a report about this committee every time, and every time I'm like, it's perfect. It's great for I support it wholeheartedly. However, I think that they're normally 6 months for a reason, and this one is 2 years. And it's time for this to go to the next, for us to do other things.
I couldn't
besides
agree
this.
with you more.
Okay, right.
Yes, we've been very fortunate to have Sergeant Jordan jumping in with both feet and honestly pulling this policy together and making it look easy, because there was a lot of information that she put together for us. It's in a very rough draft format right now. Sergeant McCauley has been helping work on fine tuning it, but we definitely are looking forward to having something that we can put before the commission and hopefully be able to mark this off as completed on our report to City Council this summer.
Thank you. And I don't mean to be like a Scrooge about it. I really support obviously, and plus the whole department functions and the public benefits, everything flows from having a well-adapted, adjusted, emotionally healthy officers. So I, couldn't emphatically state more how much I support that. I'm just ready for this process. Thank you.
Agreed. Any other questions or comments for our Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Subcommittee? All right. Vice Chair Shivers, I would love for you to give us some background about the video we're going to watch.
Yeah, so I have edited the video, so forgive it because it starts and ends abruptly. The full video is available on YouTube. I encourage everybody with questions about the full process to go and find that as well. But 10 years ago, I believe, is when it started. This is before even my time on the commission. There were a number of commissioners who were noticing a few problems with the amount of people we had on the streets, with the amount of training that they could go to because they were always busy. So this is sort of the story about how and why the community safety payroll tax was first proposed, introduced, and passed, which is particularly relevant because it's coming up for renewal. The police commission was integral in getting it passed in the first place. I think it would be a misstep if we don't have something to say about it this next time around, but that'll be for the commission to decide.
We're trying to work on the volume here.
Not entirely sure where or if anywhere this volume will come out. Sean, I'm not seeing an option to move the audio output to the OWL or to the TV.
Maybe, do we want to play it on my laptop?
You have to change the laptop's audio output, yeah. And if you hit that,
Oh, okay.
Sean.
should be able to select whatever's.
There we go. Okay, let's try this, you guys. We're gonna try this.
Just wondering if you could, tell us how you heard about it and then walk us through that process after you heard about it, what you did with that information.
And I'll tell you that, when you're a first year commissioner or first year budget committee member, you kind of listen a lot and you sit back. At least that's my style. I was in the military for 14 years, and if you're an officer, you typically would come in and take command, and you kind of say, okay, all the standard operating procedures stay in place for a while, and you just kind of assess what's going on. And that's what I did. And when you're on a commission that meets monthly, it takes almost a year because you only have a limited number of meetings, right? So how did it happen? That you're sitting there and you're watching, and the police department would have this slide, and I don't know if Sean eventually had stopped showing it when you came on board, but it was the same slide. It was like a heat map of all the crime in the city, and so you could see it, and every month it looked the same. It changed, and so you're like, wow, this is well, if I was a commander of a patrol, okay, guys, it's everything. There's no planning, and then you say, okay, well, how many police officers do we have today? And you just don't have the scale, and you realize no wonder why it took that long for me to get a police report. And I had been offered to drive to the police station, and I was told that if I drive to the police station, I'll sit there because there's nobody there. They're all out on the road. And as I'm looking at this map and how we're doing things. I started asking questions and then how the policy comes in. And so I said, I can't do anything about the heat map. We're 90 officers short, I believe is what they told us at the time. Now I'm in a policy and I go, well, hey, how often are we qualifying on our surface weapons? Or how often are we doing this kind of training? And they go, well, we can't do that because we have to take people off the road in order to do that training. And I said, well, if they're not trained, then how do you expect them to execute later? And we're not a little city. We're a city that hosts University of Oregon Duck games. We're a city that has concerts. We have a city that has festivals. We're a city that has things that other cities don't. And if you're not training for these things, my army in me is going, this isn't okay. So I said, we have to roll up our sleeves. So I said, okay, we can't even get people to train and we can't get the funding because there is no funding. So how do we do this? So we started taking folks to lunch, going to meet them for coffee. Let's just have a desk side chat and bringing people to a place where they recognize the problem. And at that time we had a police chief change and Director James came in. We started a two-pronged approach. We didn't have the money. So what we needed to do is talk about the problem. And we needed people to understand the scope of the problem. We started a communication piece where I wanted to have, if you remember, Sean, at least some of our commissioners go out to the different wards and go to their meetings. When you stand out there and you're a police commissioner and you're listening to a ward talk about the issues going on, you have to, you get everything. And sometimes they're not happy you're there because they don't understand why you're there. But if you go in there with that open heart and you leave from, hey, we're just all here sharing the same space together at this point in time, I want to hear what's going on. And you hear all the different things and you say, well, from my experience in working with the police commission and the different policies, I think that this fear, let me help alleviate this fear, share around this. And then let me help you with, you're having trouble. Let me communicate that for you. You have your permission to communicate that. And as you're taking these stories from the wards to the elected and vice versa, you become this conduit. And that conduit piece for us, we became, I think, valuable to all parties. And that when they put together this task force to look at ways to fund community safety, right? Not police funding, but it was community safety funding. That unlocked a lot of different people. It because of their communications with us. Hey, Cahoots works. So how do we fund Cahoots? I would like to put all the money in, 90 officers because we're 90 short. We're never going to get there. But we have a force multiplier over here, and that's what we find valuable too, as a community. So let's put some over here, and then let's do this. And the chief was really good, new chief at the time, Skinner, and hey, if you have this, you have to build this, right? It's not, you can't just have this level and then you got to have and you need detectives to follow up on, because they're going to be increasing the crime and the arrests here. So we need more detectives to follow up on the arrest. So, everybody had a role there and you become this conduit of information for them. How do you communicate that and then move forward? So here's the thing. We've identified the problem. We agree with the problem. Right? Once we agree on the problem, because what you might find is it's not the tax, it's the way that you went about the tax, and I don't trust you. So let's make it about the problem, and then say, here's all the different ways we can solve the problem. Which do you think you want? And that's what happened with the community safety, was there was only really one option when you laid it out. And I was the last one to buy into that. When you do the math, it usually then boils down to something. It's no longer an emotional or an argument about I don't trust you anymore, because then now it's a math problem. And now math is finite, right? The zero's a zero. If we don't add to this, we have zero. We have a negative, and so that's a whole different discussion, right? And that's where you find the buy-in. And I think business owners understand that so much. And they make up a large portion of the chamber. And I think if you approach with more communication, sitting down, and but it has to be genuine. And all players who are advocating have to be genuine along the process. Because the minute one of your players doesn't appear genuine or isn't genuine, you've lost the credibility, you're gonna lose that argument. And that's why we were very careful with safety. And as we worked through that, then options came available for how we were gonna fund it. And you get to a point where I'm not a big person that says I'm all for a tax, but when you're in this kind of place, I think it's very important that we found a way to fund it, and there just was not another way to do it. We could not generate that amount of money, and you probably remember that. There's one way, and that was the way that we found at the time. It could be changed, right? But you can look at all the avenues. If you look at all the avenues and you communicate it, and you say, come back and say, this is just the only way to do it again, I think people believe you as long as you do the work. So, and that's kind of what started happening with us is when we started moving out of the task force into the budget committee, I became that conduit to the police commission. But the work was being done now at the budget committee. But I had that footing along with Bill at the police commission to have that foundational piece. And then we had our other players that were on the task force that were able to influence from their perspective. So that's kind of how it just was a lot of work. It was a lot of communications. There was nothing, not a great sales pitch. There was never a sales pitch. It was just constant communication.
Yeah. Thank you for that. As a business owner myself, I certainly see definitely both sides of the impact there.
The way that the police commission can absolutely know that they can help right now is they can review the policies and procedures around the programs that were made possible through the community safety payroll tax funding. And so that is one way that they can absolutely support and as you're going into this next biannual retreat plan.
So that's a little bit of the background of how the community safety payroll tax was kind of a brainchild of somebody on the police commission who was also on the budget committee and started putting the wheels in motion to take it up to city council. Do you have questions for Vice Chair Shivers or Councilor Ye, who are the only commissioners who were there at the time? As far as the background, how it happened, who do we have? Oh, okay.
When is the renewal?
So it is set to expire actually in November of 27. And our biennial work plan will end in fiscal year 27. The counselors can explain a little bit what the options are for renewing it or extending it or.
We haven't discussed it, but it has a sunset date where the community has to vote to keep it. I guess technically we could say, no, we're not going to keep it. We're not going to put it to a vote. I suppose that is an option that the council probably has. I don't know. I feel like it was built in that there's an automatic vote, but. Yeah.
That's my understanding with the caveat that council could postpone the vote, and the reason behind that could be something like, well, we had the pandemic, and then we're just now getting up to full strength. So, when you look at what good has the payroll tax done in the way of adding the additional resources, we'll have the time from basically now until November of 27 to really assess it, rather than when it was first put into motion. And, the other piece was, it's been explained to me, we actually we borrowed from some reserve funds. It started a year earlier than it was supposed to be started. And that was what put the street crimes unit in place. And all the big drug busts you read about in the news and the weapons that are brought with it, and even some cartel players, it's all been done by that street crimes unit. And so when the first year fully kicked into the tax, half of it had to go back to repay those reserve funds that the money was borrowed from. So basically, the first 2 years was just the street crimes unit. And then we ran headlong into the pandemic and hiring problems and the challenges that came along with that. So again, it's It's basically from about now, maybe, we've got a month under our belt, where we're actually seeing what the full weight of the payroll tax is doing. I look forward to hearing more about that as we get closer. But I could see extending it maybe a year just so we have more data to produce, but I'm gonna reserve, at least for my vote, final judgment until we get closer to that point. It might be that we have enough data to show what it's done, that's not gonna be a problem. Anyway.
One of the reasons we're meeting in this room tonight is because this is the community court provider room. It's one of the many initiatives that was funded by the community safety payroll tax. The mural on the wall, the floral mural on the wall, our very own Sergeant Jordan was one of the artists that participated quite a bit in painting those flowers and the foliage. It's been interesting looking at the numbers. All of the community safety officers, the folks that wear the gray pants, they don't carry a gun or a taser. There's, I believe, 18 or 19 positions. Those are all funded by the community safety payroll tax. The housing support officers, street crimes unit, there's entire units at EPD that are funded by the community safety payroll tax. Now, I'm sure that all of them probably would not entirely go away if the tax was not renewed, but it would certainly take a very large chunk out of EPD's budget. Vice Chair Shivers, do you have more color to provide on this?
No, just that putting it on the work plan doesn't mean you're in favor of it necessarily. It just means that we're looking at and that the community is going to care about it. And that would probably go hand in hand.
When Chief Skinner joins us later, he will also provide some of the perspective at the executive level of what that has done and what it still can accomplish over the next 2 years. And if we choose that this is something that we want to support going forward, this would be part of where this community engagement comes in, because if this is something that we feel should go forward with the community, then we would be part of that liaising process. Clearly, obviously, the city already has a budget kerfuffle happening right now. And that is in addition to what the kerfuffle will happen with the community safety payroll tax 2 years from now. It's, of course, the voters in Eugene are, I doubt that anyone will have forgotten this, the kerfuffle that we're having with the fire fee right now by the time that the community safety payroll tax comes to the ballot. And so that will be another one of the uphill battles, because it certainly seems like it's being added along with other things according to the perceptions of a lot of folks. Any other thoughts or comments before we review our work for the last 2 fiscal years?
Just to clarify that, we will talk about this potential issue in our.
Absolutely. Yes, this will come up repeatedly. Perfect. Mostly, I just wanted us to at least have that frame of reference as we go into building our work plan, as far as the policies for the units that are funded specifically for that, or some of the impacts that either renewing it or not renewing it can have on the policies that we work on recommending to the chief. And yeah, again, that's all in addition to what's currently happening right now under our noses at City Hall. We'll go into the charge of the commission and the work outcomes that we have achieved for fiscal year 24 and 25. Per our bylaws that we revised in July of 23, our goals are to ensure that the policies and procedures of the Eugene Police Department protect the civil rights and liberties of everyone in Eugene, promote policing that respects and reflects Eugene's rich culture and diversity, increase communications, understanding, and trust between police and the people in Eugene, encourage problem solving and partnerships between people, neighborhoods, and other agencies and police, provide fair opportunities for the public and criminal justice professionals to comment and participate in the commission's work, recognizing the interconnectedness of the criminal justice system. In our packets, we have the 2024 report that Vice Chair Shivers and I presented to City Council last summer, and as well as the work plan that was developed in our last retreat. I was very pleased to report to the mayor and the city manager that we actually managed to address everything that is in the top section, our top 10 identified priorities, and most of the ones that were in the medium section. So there were some things that we discovered were not within our purview as a police commission. And so for those, we asked Chief Skinner to provide education to us, things like the discipline matrix and the mutual aid. There were other things that had already been addressed or were in the process of being addressed by state legislature. An example of one of those was the DPSST number on ID number on officer uniforms. And then, of course, we had some emergent items that arose over the last 2 years as well. With the work plan in front of you, and it's the one that has the gray lines in case anybody is wondering what it looks like. It's page 15. This is something that I've actually asked our staff liaison to provide for us in our packets moving forward for our meeting packets so that we always have this in front of us as far as what we're working towards, why we are reviewing some of the policies that we are reviewing, and what we're trying to accomplish with that 2-year lens that we have. Are there questions or discussion about our work plan that we are rolling out of? That's a lot of prepositions at the end of a sentence. My English professor would be so ashamed of me. Commissioner Lyman.
I just want to make a comment. I'm looking at page 11 and I'm looking as outlined in the municipal code 2.3684A. And then it lists the 5 items that the commission objectives are. And I think sometimes, you know, I understand the city's perspective of its policy, and it's specific policies that they want input on. But I just want to reaffirm, like, I'm sitting here because a lot of significant things happen in the community around policing. And I said earlier today that the feeding of the homeless, the ICE potential, that the assisting of dismantling homeless encampments, things that like might, you know, are just topical and relevant, and I think do fit within some of these 1 through 5s. And I just want to remind us as a group, one of the reasons that we went south a few months ago is that there was a habit of bringing up topical, relevant items in a really aggressive anti-police manner. You know, there's really no kind of way to sugarcoat that. It wasn't particularly thoughtful around a discussion like the commissioner in the video that we watched was preaching to us. And that's really important. And it's a good opportunity. This is not directed at anyone or anything, just other than we should be able to bring up relevant topical concerns about things that are happening with the police, understanding that it's not our role to advise on operations or tactics, but it's certainly within our purview. And it certainly would go smoother in all relationships if when we have those items that we bring them up in a mildly objective rather than extremely subjective manner, regardless of where we're coming from. And I don't mean to sound preachy or anything, but I just think that it's kind of, for me, it's missing. We don't talk enough, like there have to be significant police issues that arise. And, you know, I'm a Reddit guy and I watch the Eugene subreddit, and there's always, you know, this happened, that happened. And I think the chief and Deputy Chief Adams have been great at responding and providing information and stuff. And so I just, yeah, that's my comment on the objectives of the commission.
Thank you for sharing that, Commissioner Lyman. And that actually leads to the space that we always hold for emergent issues, because some of those certainly qualified and merited a lot of discussion from the police commission. Vice Chair Shivers.
Yeah, I just want to echo. That has been my biggest frustration when folks try to shut down the things that the police commission wants to do because it's not policy. And so I want everybody to get very comfortable pushing back when the police resource issues gives us quite a lot of leeway in things we are charged to address. And community priority covers most of the rest of it. So yeah, I very much echo that sound. As far as styles of communication, I think we all have different styles of communication, and that they don't always gel well together, and it's always frustrating, but we are adults, so we have to work around that. I'm not always going to work with people who agree with us. So thank you for voicing that.
While I agree with you that we are adults and we don't always get our way, sometimes I'm an adult. I think it is important to ensure that we hold space for the voices that may be less comfortable in a venue like this. And I'm speaking as the non-physical venue, obviously not this building, but in a room full of police commissioners, and also ensuring that the folks who are speaking, whether they be commissioners or public comment, feel heard and feel safe. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Chair. Sean, I'm not clear exactly when you're saying pushing back, or is that just a broad?
Yeah, it's just, there are often disagreeing voices about things that we should address. And one of the things that the people who, I am guilty of saying we should address things that we shouldn't address. Like I put bad things on the work plan before. And often when people are trying to say, hey, don't look into that, the pushback that I have received when I was chair was, that's not a policy issue, so it's not the police commission's job. But as these objectives illustrate, as the ordinance illustrates, we have a mandate that goes beyond policy and procedures. Granted, it is policy and procedure down, and we have a tendency of looking up towards interagency agreements and mutual aid and state laws and stuff, which we don't have any purview over. But things like the park are resource issues, which very much do fall within our.
So it's not a specific group, it's just people trying to redefine what it is we're supposed to be doing.
It's various conversations.
Okay, all right.
Commissioner Lyman.
But it does seem to be a default response to when we get into areas that push against how an operational, it could, it's what lens you view it through. And so I'm not being accusatory or negative towards the city, but I will say that it is often a default thing that you're here to talk about policy. Not that we get shut down and we do find room and stuff, but I think that's I have that impression as well, that it hasn't been as free flowing based on, and it's important. It's not without, the guidelines are important.
I'm new to this.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to
sure,
make sure I
sure.
understand. It seems like everybody's on the same page, but
Nobody said like, you can't look into this. But we lost a lot of institutional memory when Jeremy left. We lost a lot of institutional memory when Dallas passed. So, I just want to pass on what I can.
thank you.
Commissioner Rady.
Yeah, I think we have a problem of definition in that on paper and formally, the police commission is to advise the city and the chief, giving community input on policy. We don't decide on policy, we recommend policy, we do not administer policy, we do not discuss procedures, incidents, and so forth, from a position of command. We have no authority. We are a voice. That said, there are only two bodies in Eugene that give the public a formal, well, three. Thank you. I had almost forgotten. That have three public bodies that have, in some sense, a say on police issues, and those are the City Council, the CRB, and the Police Commission. And because there are different ideas, perceptions, and reports on all these issues, this is one of the places some of them end up, whether it's actually formally our business or not. Our main concern is to reflect those voices we hear, not just from people who come to meetings, and thank you, but from others that we're in contact with, because we live in Eugene and we listen. To give some sort of a voice to those, but specifically in regard to policy recommendations. And that's not unreasonable because it is easy for us to wander off into deciding what the department really should do and should have done with this particular thing and on this incident or in this kind of case. It should have gone this way. That's really not constructive. We won't get anywhere with that. We won't accomplish anything. But we do have, in some sense, a mission, whether it is formal or otherwise, to be one channel for the community's voices to reach the city and the department.
Vice Chair? You guys can fight it out.
I don't think. Oh, thank you.
Commissioner Neal.
I think one of the ways that this has come about in police commission that I have appreciated is it also supporting our the objective number 4, which is objective number 3, which is decreasing misunderstandings regarding nature of policies, practices, and approaches, where we are a conduit for voices in the community that have questions about how things happen, and when you're able to have conversations about that with more information, sometimes it decreases misunderstandings about how things are happening in the city or from the police department's standpoint. So whether or not we end up all agreeing at the table about that, at least it's uncovering more information about those issues. So I think I agree with what's being said, and I think it is many of these objectives that are supported by those kinds of conversations.
Vice Chair?
I was just gonna say, do you want to take a break now?
Well, I was actually going to I was gonna have you make a motion, Vice Chair. Since our photographer has arrived, because we were going really, really fast through things, and I said, oh, let's get the photographer here earlier to do the photo shoot. So I would love to have a motion from you, Vice Chair, to change our agenda so that we have our photo shoot and then we break for dinner.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Thank you. Any opposed, please let me know. And if any abstaining, okay. I'm not even entertaining any discussion on that one. Look at that. So we will break for photos. We have the EPD, one of the public information officers here. And then we will go straight into our dinner break. I will remind the commissioners that because we are here and because we have quorum, we are not to discuss any police commission business while we are enjoying our dinner. But then we will come back to the table at 5:40, as long as everyone is agreeable with that, 5:40, 5:45-ish, depending on how long Michael takes with photos. And Holly has provided Jimmy John's for us and fruits and veggies and chips and snacks and all sorts of things.
And there's some veggie sandwiches in case anyone doesn't care for meat or can't eat meat.
Wonderful.
Get us back up and running. Okay.
Welcome back to the Police Commission Biannual Work Retreat. Next on our agenda, we have Chief Skinner's summary of EPD's direction. That was my fancy title. I don't know what he actually would call it.
Thank you. Chair, I know you've got a list of things that you want me to talk about in front of you. They're not in front of me though, so you might just let me know that you have some things. So, summary of EPD's direction is we're going to talk a little bit about community safety payroll tax. I'll talk to you a little bit about where we're at with budgeting and staffing, anticipated legislature and or legislation, and then the new auditor, and kind of as much as I know, the two counselors at the table might know actually more than I on a couple of these. So we'll see if we can go through that. So let me start with the community safety payroll tax. So understand that over the course of this, originally it started out and when the chair asked me a question, I don't know where you were at, he asked me a question. We have a tendency to interchange the community safety initiative or the CSI with community safety payroll tax, the CSPT. It originally we called it the CSI, but we have moved that for a variety of reasons, moved it to the community safety payroll tax because we think it more accurately reflects people's payroll tax dollars and what they're getting for their payroll tax. We want to bring that to the forefront. So it's the CSPT. So when I refer to it, CSPT, it's community safety payroll tax. Community safety payroll tax is a progressive payroll tax on payrolls of employers that are in Eugene. So as an employee in Eugene, regardless of where you live, if you work in Eugene and paid out of Eugene, then there is a payroll tax to both individuals and the businesses. There's various rates to account for some of our lowest income workers. And over the course of a year, it funds approximately, right now, it's funding approximately 23.5 to 24 million, maybe $24 million a year in new revenue for the community safety types of initiatives that are going on. The lion's share of that money is in the Eugene Police Department, but understand it also resides in central services and municipal court services, defense services, those types of things, fire and youth services out of LRCS. So, but the PD is often the one that's seen aligned with that the most, just because we take up quite a bit of that. We take up more than half of that total funding. The community safety payroll tax funds about 54 full-time equivalent employees across the organization. It's a variety of different positions. Most of those are police officer positions that are assigned in different areas. I just recently wrote a small paragraph to council as a result of a conversation or a question that Councilor Evans had at the last budget committee meeting. And so it's a little bit front of mind for me. And one thing I would say is, like with anything in life, when we do something new and we do it for several years and it doesn't become new anymore, we kind of forget how much we've accomplished. It's kind of like watching your kids grow up and you're just like, how did you get so big? You just never can remember how that happened. And so here we are today trying to look back on what has been accomplished with the community safety payroll tax, because there are perceptions about the payroll tax that are very individual to people. There are some that have felt positive impacts from the community safety payroll tax, and there's some that their individual experiences is such that they didn't see a positive impact from payroll tax. But some of the high level things that this payroll tax has been able to do within EPD is maybe first and foremost, the entirety of the community service officer program, the CSO program, which is is an alternative response for police calls for service. They are uniform wearing but not gun carrying sworn law enforcement positions. The entirety of that program, all 19 of them, are funded out of this. And so when you see those Ford Lightning trucks driving around the community, those would not be there if not for the community safety payroll tax. And so there's a tremendous amount of value there. And sometimes people don't connect those dots. And that's where I go back to, you just, when you get used to seeing the service, you forget kind of the fact that you never had that service before. And so that's a big value to the organization. The other one that is often forgot is the 10 police officers that were hired and make up our street crimes team. And I shared with council through Councilor Evans' question. These are rough numbers, but from the inception of that team, they've done a lot of really good work in and around our neighborhoods. And there's some of the highlights that resonate with folks is they've confiscated more than 400 guns and taken those off the streets. They've confiscated more than 500 pounds of methamphetamine and taken it off our streets. 17 pounds of heroin, several pounds of cocaine, and maybe most importantly, about 40,000 pills of fentanyl. And so people forget that that's happening, and sometimes it's happening without a lot of fanfare, because those kinds of investigations we often try and keep a little bit quiet, because when we make an initial arrest, it can lead to other arrests, and we don't want the general public knowing what we're doing, because we're kind of going after the bigger fish. And so, but just know that street crimes team would not be happening and doing the kind of work that they're doing with the community safety payroll tax. Other things, our online reporting solution would not be as robust as it is. The community safety payroll tax is the money that helped us get our first co-responder downtown for alternative response to behavioral and mental health issues. The community safety payroll tax has funded our drone first response program. We would not be as responsive with drones, not only enhancing officer safety, but answering calls for service in a different way than we ever have before with drone response. And we have a lot of people that don't recognize when they get a phone call from a drone operator saying, hey, I'm over your house, I'm looking for your suspicious person, or I'm looking for your prowler, or I just want you to know that we're here and we're watching and keeping you safe. They don't connect the dots. We don't lead with, hey, this is the drone team funded by your community safety payroll tax. We're here to help you. People just forget that that's what that is. So, so there's a lot there. There's a lot there, and the genesis of the community safety payroll tax was designed largely to try and be able to handle more calls for service. Some people would like to believe that it was brought to fruition with the specificity of attacking a certain type of crime. That's not necessarily the case. The case was there were calls for service that we couldn't get to, and people were frustrated. All kinds of calls for service. So we're hoping to positively affect various types of crimes by being able to be more responsive. But we never really focused on a specific type of crime. The number one call for service in our community is criminal trespass, which is unusual for most municipalities. Most municipalities our size, well, in most municipalities, regardless of size, the number one calls for service usually center around some type of theft, quality of life crimes, those types of things, shoplift, car prowl burglaries, that always leads. And in our case, it actually is a number 2 to criminal trespass. So we think we can positively impact our property crimes by addressing other crimes. And so we're working hard on some crime reduction goals this next year with respect to that. So community safety payroll tax is fully staffed right now. There's no, I mean, if we have an FTE to be filled in there, it's because somebody left and we're just rehiring, but there's no new FTE being added to the payroll tax. So it's fully brought out. Where we're lagging behind is in our general fund. And in 2019, when council made the decision to do some bridge funding before this took effect, because when I say bridge funding, basically we loaned ourselves some money to be able to start making some hires of officers, predicting that the community safety payroll tax was gonna take effect. The Eugene Police Department was fully staffed, and we actually overhired by 3 and fully staffed probably for the first time in the history of the department. And we were really optimistic about this, the CSPT adding officers. And then 2020 and 2021 and 2022 happened. And at the height of some of that, we were down as many as 36 police officers. So we never got to see the real benefit of adding the numbers that we needed to. We just could have never predicted we'd go through some of the challenges that we went through, both as a community and as a nation. And so we're trying to get back to where we can say we are fully staffed and with the full complement of CSPT, FTE. We are in dispatch, we are going to be fully staffed for the first time since 2019, probably by July 1. So that's good. Those folks often get overlooked in this work, but CSPT supports dispatcher positions. Those folks sit there and listen to people's grief for 10, 12 hours a day without a break, oftentimes, or at least very few breaks. And sometimes they're underappreciated for the work they do. And in our police officer ranks, we just had a recruitment this weekend, and we ended up with a really, really big number of people. Unfortunately, many of them didn't pass the interview, but I think we took 8 or 10 to background. So we'll be hiring another bunch of officers. If we're able to get even just half of those, we'll be down to about single digits. I think we'll be down to six vacancies. Well, actually, I'll fill all the vacancies that I am funded to fill. And then any other vacancies I have, I don't have funding for. So I have general fund positions that I don't have funding for. They didn't take the positions away, they just don't have any funding for it. But the city manager has been challenged me. She said, Chris, if you can fill them, let's talk. And so she challenged me to fill them, and so I'm taking that challenge. So I think I'm hoping to organize. I'm hoping to have a conversation with her in the not so distant future about.
She dared you.
So all of that to say that, and this is my backhanded way with my two counselors saying here, all of that to say, I think our CSPT, the maturity, I think the CSPT's growth has been stunted. I think we need a couple more years to really see the full effects of being fully staffed and doing that work. Mayor, just sneaking up on a police chief is never a good idea.
Mayor Karin Knudsen, folks.
So I think that growth has been stunted by a few years, just because we could have never anticipated what was going to happen in the early 2020s. We are technically on pace to have this particular initiative go to a vote sometime in 27. I'm going to just call it November of 27, which is just around the corner. And so there is, I would say a level of nervousness and cautious optimism around what that looks like for us in 2027. If it fails, that's, $24, $25 million worth of funding that goes away, and all the positions that go with it. It almost fully funds FTE. It's not necessarily equipment. There's some complementary equipment that goes with that, like cars for police officers and some of those things, but it's mostly FTE that go away. So that's where we're at with CSPT. I honestly can't imagine being the leader of this organization absent that resource to be able to do things that we needed to do. Again, council was really, really brave. I think they were really courageous in making this decision. It was met with, and Councilor Ye was there when this all went down. It was, not met without its issues and pushback. And what we hear from our business community is, we're getting taxed and we're not seeing a benefit. And what I would say is, while I appreciate people's individual experiences, when we think about this, I think about this as a community. What can I see that's been different in the community? When I tell you about 400 pounds of methamphetamine being 500 pounds of methamphetamine being taken off the streets, 400 guns, 40,000 fentanyl pills, it's pretty profound. So that's the CSPT stuff. Questions on that I can answer for people?
And Commissioner Folks.
I might be jumping ahead. So in light of the current city budget and the changes that are gonna happen, as well as this, are you already future planning option B, C, D type of a thing?
Well, that's kind of, but not maybe in the way you're thinking. Council, I think, we have a proposed budget that suggests $11.5 million worth of cuts because we have to have a balanced budget. Some of those cuts are in EPD, some of those cuts within EPD and other areas of the city are highly controversial. For many people in the community. And I know that there's still work to be done, both at the council level and the budget committee level. So while we have a plan for how we're going to do things now, I think there's a little bit of, we need to just wait just a little bit and see kind of what some of any new information that comes out of the next couple of council meetings and or budget committee meetings to be able to do that. So, but the cuts proposed in the budget affect the general fund only and not the community safety payroll tax. And so we have two different bugs. One is fund 11,011 and community safety payroll tax is fund 136. And so fund 136 is not part of being discussed. It's only fund 11 right now.
Other questions for the chief about community safety payroll tax? Counselor.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah.
So in trying to make a correlation between the payroll tax and the fire services fee that's going on right now, and I know you and I have chatted about this before, depending how we handle the fire safety services tax or fee, excuse me, it could have an effect on the public's perception of CSI as well.
You know, Counselor, I mean, it's a good point, but there's a variety of things that are on my mind that could affect that. I mean, on any given election year, if and when it goes to ballot, when the CSPT that is, it could compete with other things that are really important to this community as well. I mean, you got a variety of things going on, you know, different library levies and different kind of initiatives, and so we're always mindful of the strategy around when that should go on the ballot as it competes with other things. Kind of the fatigue that the community might be feeling around another tax. My hope is that, you know, we've been in this space for this many years and it kind of feels like the new normal. And that we would be able to capitalize on that, because I don't think probably if it goes, it's going to be, I don't know this, but I guess if and when it goes to the ballot, it's not going to be proposed at a higher rate. It would just be a status quo type of thing, because the whole point of it being a payroll tax is as payrolls grow, the tax grows. And so the idea is that it would grow commensurate with the employees that we're hiring. Whether or not that happens in all cases, I doubt it, but that was the thought behind it. But yeah, I agree with you. I'd be lying to you if I wasn't having some level of anxiety around the discussions around the fire services fee and how it might impact it.
That's concerning me as
Community
well.
safety bill.
The other thing is, I think your staff have done a really good job of connecting the dots, at least when they communicate with council about different actions that are taken. Said this was possible because of the payroll tax. And I know there's been some of that that's been pushed publicly, but it just seems like we need to renew our effort at public information so people really draw the correlation between the payroll tax and what you just described. In fact, we talked about that a little bit during opening comments from commissioners. And then also the fact that we're just now realizing the full benefit of the payroll tax with getting our staffing. You know, until now, between the pandemic and, you know, the having to borrow and then pay back that first year, which, you know, was brilliant to get the street crimes ended up and running. I think some of those nuances are lost in the public. I mean, I certainly pick up on that when I talk to people, try to explain how we got to where we are. But I wouldn't say that's universally understood.
How many of you noticed the sign when you walked in here? Out front. You know what it said?
Funded by community safety payroll tax.
How many of you saw that? So that's my point. That's my point is it's becoming, we're getting to a place to your point. We're getting to a place where we make assumptions that this has just always been there. If you look at many of the gray cars, which were shifting to gray, on the side of the car, it says community safety payroll tax funded.
I have seen that.
So we're doing that. One of the challenges, we got a really, really robust public campaign. I don't know if you've seen any of the commercials going on, but we had to suspend it recently because people were confusing that with the fire fee. So we had to suspend that because it was creating some confusion in the community about, is this the fire fee you're sending? We're seeing these commercials out, or is this? And so we've had to suspend that. So it's complicated, right? It's complicating our ability to try and communicate to the public on a daily, weekly basis. Here's where those tax dollars are going. And we had to step away from that for the time being to do that.
Well, it is complicated. I'm not laying this all at the police's feet. This is something we need to work on as a city,
Sure.
to have very strategic communications.
Yeah.
And we've got time to bring people up to speed and educate. But if we don't figure out how to knit these things together.
Yeah. That part of the community of the central services budget, this community court service provider room is funded by the community, where we're sitting today. And this is important to the community to have the ability to have this kind of specialty court for our low-level offenders to be able to go to. So all of that to say, I agree with you. We need to continue to do a good job. We need to push it everywhere we can. We need, I heard when I came in and listened to some end of your conversations around how you feel like it's your job to be able to provide accurate and good information and advocate and all these things. This is another area of advocacy that you can really lean into is recognizing and talking to your folks about the community safety payroll tax and the value there.
Vice Chair Shivers.
Yeah, so I've already got outreach from the CSPT on my things that I want to put on the work plan. Is there anything else from the department's point of view that we should be looking forward to as a commission?
Well, I know you guys will build your work plan, and I know you probably have a really good recommendation from Sergeant Jordan around policies. It never ceases to amaze me every time we go through accreditation, which is every 3 years, that there ends up being some policy that hasn't been looked at in like a decade. And so I would say, there'll be some that maybe you really would find interesting, and quite honestly, there's probably some policies that are just a yawner. And we just need to, we just need to update the language and then get a new date on it because it hasn't changed. So I would say just that policy work is really important. I think one of the things that has, and I'll just share with you one of my frustrations with the commission, not anybody in particular, but just in my experience with the commission over the last 7 years, has been that it's, I think Clay had mentioned that part of what you felt like the mission was based on the ordinance is to ask the right questions so you can get the right pieces of information. And I'm happy to share that stuff. I think there've been a few instances where the commission members come with really bad information. And the minute that comes out of their mouth, that becomes gospel for many people that are listening. And so creating space to be able to ask the question a different way. Say, this is what I'm hearing. What can you tell me about it? As opposed to coming and saying, this is what happened. And just being mindful of that, because that's really hard to unwind that, because your voices are really powerful. And I want you to have the right information. And there's going to be some instances where I can give you that really good information. And then there's going to be some instances where if it's a personnel issue or ongoing investigation, I can't. But so Sean, I would just say, just continue to think about what advocacy really means as a commissioner for the police department and things that
we hit on 2 minutes before.
Okay.
Sure did. Commissioner Folks.
So, Chair Hawkins had talked about opportunities coming up this summer to table different events and those types of things. And I don't know if this is in our wheelhouse. It sounds like perhaps being able to do an FAQ sheet of the highlights that the safety payroll tax has done. And
I don't know, I'll leave that up to you to decide whether you feel like that's in your wheelhouse or not. But I know that the police commission is always welcome to table events that we're holding. We have a variety of stakeholders that are there, and so I think that's perfectly appropriate. So,
Chief, historically at some of these events, we've been at a separate table from EPD. Is there a specific reason for that?
Well, I don't know if there's a specific reason. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there's been differing opinions over the course of the 7 years as to whether or not you guys have felt like you're too close to the police department. And you fielded some of those complaints, Chair, and others. And so I think it's a bit of a delicate balance for you all. you know? Some would suggest, I think part of the problem is I think the general public maybe doesn't understand what your role is. And many of them think that your role is to hold us accountable. And that's not your role wholeheartedly, to be the accountability mechanism. We have other accountability mechanisms. I think your job is to create really good police policy and to give us the best chance to be successful. In the event that policy is violated, there's a whole separate mechanism that stands that up. But so many people think that you are the starting point for accountability of the police department. In the truest sense of accountability. Now, there's a way to kind of do that where you're like, I'm going to hold the police department accountable by asking the police commission to write good police policy. But so I would say I need good policy. I need good policy recommendations. I need policy recommendations that are deeply rooted in a variety of voices, because we're not going to always see it the same way from our perspective. But to your point, I'd leave it up to you on how close or distant you want to be from us, based on public perception.
Thank you. Vice Chair Shivers.
Yeah, as someone who was making some of the decisions about why we would table separately, at the time I made the decision to table separately because the people we most need to talk to are also the people who are most afraid of interacting with the police directly. So I felt at the time that having those two tables separated gave both the police the opportunity to interact with the public and anybody who was unwilling to interact with the police another outlet.
All right. Thank you for that perspective. Commissioner Reedy.
Yes, I've only been to one of these. I tabled with you at the Asian Festival. And my experience was that absolutely no one had any questions about the police commission, seemed to know anything about the police commission or any interest in the police commission. 3 people asked us if we were the CRB, and we gave out whistles to a lot of kids to annoy their parents with, which presumably enhanced the reputation. Other than that, I don't think anyone who walked past that table had, police commission, whatever that is. What they got down here? They're making buttons. So that was just one person's one-time experience. Sure, there are other opportunities for community contact that will be far more productive, but I didn't get the feeling there was a great hunger out there to, police commission, what are you doing? I got some ideas for you. Like, huh?
So don't vote for the payroll tax on horses.
Yeah. Probably a bad idea. Kids can't vote.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, that is also. It's very much it. The value is in that we get to explain to folks who we are. They're not coming to look for us. We have to go to them.
I'd like to pivot and welcome our mayor, Corinne, who invited herself along for this evening, and I was thrilled. I think it's fantastic.
That's exactly how it went. We were having my office with your commission leadership barely over a week ago, and the date of this event came up. I just came back from a conference that I was at in Portland midday, but just wanted to stop by here and thank you for that introduction, Chair, to say hello to you all in person, and also to just appreciate the work that goes into this type of collaborative effort to build a work plan. I will also share, just as a related aside, that my experience interviewing several people who are interested in the limited number of vacancies for this commission was also that there was a lot of opportunity to do education around what the role of the police commission is and the opportunities of engagement with this body could look like in terms of that responsibility. And I took all of those opportunities to share information and hopefully leave everyone with a clear impression of the role of this group, but also really underscored this opportunity we have in our community, especially right now, to explain how it is that what we are doing in Eugene, Oregon, related to public safety, how it is structurally different from a lot of what exists around the country. And I would say that at a time when there is so much information that people are gathering in terms of news and context through social media and a national lens, and I say this also being in touch with mayors around our country, there are a lot of places that do not have a police commission, a police auditor, a civilian review board, right? Those structures are not present in every place. but oftentimes we're having a conversation about public safety and the work that our police departments do that presume everywhere is operating with the same kind of structure and system. So I just wanted to appreciate to you all the effort that goes into helping us be as successful as we can be within the system that we've designed here. And really just underscore and appreciate that role of helping us to foster communication and have policy that meets our community's values in place. And that communications role and responsibility and the two-way responsibility of that work is something that I'm trying to emphasize with all of our commission and board leadership, because right now, I think community-wide, but also in different areas of interest, we're really suffering collectively from a lack of shared understanding of the work that we're trying to do and how it is that we can implement and see the benefit of the values that we share. So that will be, I think, consistent across a lot of efforts that are happening with different commissions and appointed and volunteer groups within the city. And thank you, because I know it's a beautiful evening. We're here building a plan together, and that takes time and effort. And I just wanted to appreciate you all in person for doing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes. And I will probably sneak out
Yes.
shortly.
Absolutely.
But
Stay as long as you like, have as many snacks, cookies as you like. We won't judge you if you just stuff your face full of cookies. Yes.
What else do you want me to address, Chair? Are you feeling?
Anticipated legislation.
No.
I know drones is supposed to come down sometime this summer.
Say that again. Who?
Drones.
Oh, drone. So, the group that I'm connected with from a legislative perspective is Oregon Association Chiefs of Police, which is in collection with Oregon State Sheriff's Association, ODA, which is Oregon District Attorneys Association. It's the long session right now. We're in lots of committee hearing and testimony being given. There's a variety of public safety bills that are on the table, none of which are rising to the level, in my mind, of being hugely problematic. There is one, as the chair alluded to, there is some, I think it's either Senate or House Bill 238, which is speaking to the use of drones in public safety, trying to essentially, and we can boil it down to one sentence, use drones in the course of lawful police activity. Right now, drone use cannot be used unless we have probable cause to believe that a crime is occurring. So for instance, if somebody called and said, I think I've got a prowler in my yard, we couldn't fly. We can't fly for fires. We can fly for search and rescue. We can fly for, like I said, probable cause to believe crime is in progress. But there's so many ways that we could be leveraging new drone technology, which not only saves money, enhances officer safety. We can get on station much quicker than driving a 3,500-pound automobile across the town. That we're trying to think about how we thoughtfully do that. We're working closely with individuals at the ACLU and trying to get some language that makes sense. And so we'll see if it passed the House. I think it goes to the Senate, which might be a little bit more difficult, but we're certainly thinking about how we can leverage technology better to deliver police services. When you think about alternative response and trying to find ways to not have to send gun carrying police officers to certain things, this is, in my mind, another way of providing an alternative response that's actually safer with less human conflict. We had Senator Przansky in, and we had Speaker Fahey in, both to see the drone program, and one, I don't remember which one of them, but we, interestingly enough, while they were in there getting the tutorial, we had a shoplift in progress at the DSW, which is the discount shoe place over by Oakway. We were able to fly the drone, get it over the top of DSW, watch the guy come out with all the shoes, and then followed him to his location, and were able to tell the officers and vector the officers in. So it was just so efficient. And it was really impressive at how quickly we were able to do that. Variety of things. I mean, even down to when you think about climate recovery goals that we have, we have as many electric vehicles as we can have, but let's fly a drone instead of a police car. Or let's fly a drone first before we send an engine and an ambulance and everything to something that we don't need to send it to. Let's go check it out. Those types of things. We're happy to do that. So that's some legislation that's coming, and so we'll see. We put a lot of effort into that, but nothing other than nothing really on the radar screen that causes me any concern or equally a ton of excitement either. It actually is a pretty quiet public safety session for legislation. So
Senator Manning had mentioned that he had worked on a bill that would keep cops who are under investigation from resigning and immediately getting hired at another agency. Has that already passed, or is that still in the works?
well, I don't know specifically the legislation he has. There's a mechanism already in place that accomplishes that, at least in the state of Oregon.
Okay.
So I would have to better understand what he believes the gap is. So the way it works right now is if a police officer resigns while under investigation, we have to sign a form is F2, I believe. And we have several boxes we can sign when somebody separates employment. One of them is retired in good standing all the way to terminated and or resigned while under investigation. The minute that goes to DPSS2, it triggers an investigation and an audit of that officer. They call us through public records and get all of the documentation, and they go through a fairly extensive review of decertification. So Oregon decertifies more officers than anybody in the state, and we're the least police state in the country. The officer per 1,000 ratio in Oregon is lower than most of the country. And yet this DPSST, Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, has one of the most robust decertification programs in the country. So there's some mechanisms there because we as chiefs know we don't want to spread, we don't want each other's bad apples either. So now, having said that, if somebody left our organization and moved out of state and tried to get a job, it's hard to hold other organizations accountable for what they do for kind of their due diligence on applicants. But likely if it's worth decertification or at least a suspension of certification, that happens pretty quickly after the person.
I see Councilor Gross and then Commissioner Rady.
Go ahead. I just lost my question.
Oh, okay.
All right, Commissioner Rady.
Were you aware of any efforts in the legislature to have legislation regarding recognizing stress as a disability?
I'm
I've talked
not
to
aware.
legislators before about it.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any. I know that comes up often as a legitimate workers' comp claim. And so we've had people go out on stress claims. My experience has been, Jack, that if the stress, because you have to fill out all if the stress can be anchored to a significant event, it seems to be more successful.
Yeah.
The piece that we miss is the cumulative stress.
Yeah. That's what I'm asking about.
You know, as I finish, and Councilor Groves can talk about this after his 30 some odd year career in fire service, you know, I'm getting ready to start my 36th year in doing this, and I'm broken in some places still. You know, and you're never there's no such thing as an unbroken police officer unless you're just brand new and you haven't experienced it. And so that cumulative stress is a real thing. I just am not sure that we as a society have that.
Counselor?
I'm just curious, what was the rationale the state had for not allowing police drones on fire incidents?
Well, part of it was, and this was Senator Przanski back in 2013 when drones started to kind of be a thing. They really, really wanted to keep it narrow. Okay. And really the way the statute or kind of read was you got to have probable cause to believe crimes occurring. And, you know, being able to fly for fires just never kind of neatly fit in that bucket. Now, there's probably instances where we have tried to, you know, for in the interest of public safety, we've tried to utilize those resources and find a way to do those. But we'd like to get to a place where if it's a lawful police activity to include these kind of other things that we can fly. So That's my recollection or my understanding from 2013.
We did some tests on drones prior to 2010. You know, just 3 minutes for a total recon with infrared for heat signatures on chemical reactions going on in tank cars, and no human put in harm's way.
Yeah.
We could do in 3 minutes with a drone what took an hour for suiting up level A, walking the half-mile into the scene, getting all the pictures, the valving and everything, and walking back out and reporting. And it just, I was sold the minute I saw it.
Yeah, you know, what's interesting, and if you're ever interested, Kyle Williams, my sergeant, is actually seen as one of the experts nationwide. He is actually the president of some drone association nationwide. And so EPD is seen as really the leader in some of this, where this is going. And if you're ever interested in wanting to come watch a day of the drone operators, and what's interesting is we have 2 locations, one in West and one over here and closer to downtown. The drones deploy off the rooftops of businesses and then come back and get charged on their own. We're sitting at the office flying these things with screens that have the FAA stuff, because we have some FAA implications flying drones, and then the screen of seeing what the drones see, and then the other call screen is what we call live 911. So the point of this is that a 911 call can come in and we can see it the same time dispatch is getting it, and we can immediately start flying, head in that direction. It's just so efficient. It's just so efficient. But from an officer safety perspective, now, I mean, in the old days, if you had an armed barricade or a hostage or something like that, you know, it was human resources that would solve that problem. Now we break a window and fly a drone that's about this big, and just we fly through the house and just see where bad guy is, or what the situation is, and then fly out. And we have that instant intel. It keeps them safer. It keeps the person that we're dealing with safer, because we can better understand how to approach it. And oftentimes when they see the drone, they give up, because they feel like part of the strategy of anything is to try to create or take away the sense of being insulated, and that does that. And it helps us have a better approach. But we've enhanced officer safety and community responsiveness with the drone use. So and I think that we're just the tip of the iceberg.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to watch them do their work.
Last question, Commissioner Rady.
Yeah, you said that it currently is considered that if I call in, there's a prowler in my yard, can't fly the drone. Isn't that presumed criminal trespass?
It's not probable cause. The fact that you think you have a prowler in the yard does not constitute probable cause to believe that a crime's being committed.
If I've seen someone?
Well, it's still probably, we develop probable cause, you can't develop.
Okay, so, but since there's no one there, sending the drone can't go to determine probable cause and then dispatch.
Yeah. Probable cause can only be determined through a variety of things, some of which might be your statements, but we have to be able to have an independent ability to determine.
That would sound like one that would be good to correct.
Well, I mean, it's you know, it's one of those things where, and what I would say, just the last thing I would say about alternative response, with a really, really busy police department, you can imagine something like that falls very low on the priority list. And in the event that it is low on the priority list with a drone response, we can actually serve your needs. I've been in there where they're on the phone with somebody who's concerned and we're flying, and they can say, I thought I saw him over here by the shed, and we fly the drone over and we look behind the shed and we say, nope, there's nobody back. And so you have this interaction. It's just not us flying and hoping that the person knows that we're there. We actually call them and let them know we're on station. This is what you're going to see. And it's funny, now we've done it a lot, people recognize it for what it is. Oh, that's EPD drone. Do that. We were thinking about naming it, having a community campaign to see if they want to name our drones, because, you know, we named our CNT truck Lawanda. So everybody calls it Lawanda after Senator Manning's love wife. And so it's just kind of a fun thing. Kids like to name the drones. So we might do that. So.
All right. So we gave the chief extra time because I don't think anybody here ever objects to learning more from the chief. Page 29 in your packet has a list of policy recommendations that has been provided to us. This is a compilation of a list from Sergeant Jeremy Cleversey, as far as policies affecting community safety payroll tax, and is what our community has brought to us as well. And so I'm going to pass around a stack of labels with your name on them. Please take only the strip that has your name on it. Chief, you don't get any stickers.
Okay.
Because we're actually going to use them as part of our process for developing our work plan for the next 2 years. So each of you have been given 10 stickers that have your name on them. Vice Chair Shivers, I'm going to need you to explain this voting process because I still don't fully understand it myself. We're doing what we did last time.
So I believe we had less stickers, but doesn't,
Holly and I thought we had 10, so that's what
it doesn't really matter one.
we have 10.
We take a list of the things that we think we should look into over the next year. And then we allow folks to vote on them, vote for the same thing multiple times.
So you have a maximum of 3 that you can put on any one policy. So any one policy, if it mattered a whole bunch to every single one of the 8 of us, we could all 8 of us put 3 things on it. It would be weighted 24.
Then at the end, we sort of tell them.
Yes.
Where do we put things?
So that's going to be Commissioner Folks. This is where I get to volunteer you. Counselor Groves, question.
Yes, I have a question. Do we have any information on which of these are causing problems?
Ooh. So that's a really good question. A lot of them were ones, so what I asked Sergeant Jordan to provide to us was the date they were last revised. And then as much as just a tiny little snippet of information about what the policy affects. And so, and I think things were actually got put into some sort of order, and I'm not sure which ones Jeremy added to the list.
If I can, I'll maybe try to.
Oh, page
so
31, I think.
One of the things that's really nice about being accredited every 3 years is that you're probably not going to see a policy on here that's like a problem. Because if it was a problem, we would have addressed it at accreditation. So there's not like a one here. It's like critical. I need you to fix this for me because we're struggling. That's not going to be in here. Probably. Likely what you're going to see in here is a variety of things that either pique your interest because of the topic, and or the date of last revision is so old that as a policy group, you should maybe pay attention to those, because one could make the assumption the police commission oversees policy and yet you got policies that have been done. And so you may want to pick those up. But Councilor Groves, there's not, as I look across here, I don't think there's anything that is going to jump out at me that's like, I need this one fixed.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, we're not, at least I'm not an expert in.
Sure.
And then. So, I was gonna ask, do you want us to limit our suggestions for what to the work plan to like 3 per person?
How did you do that part last time?
Last
Honestly, I
time?
don't remember.
Last time we had the whole meeting dedicated to it, because the first half, people proposing ideas.
Right.
We spent a break combining those ideas into buckets, and then the last half we spent arguing, well, discussing. But I think we could improve the process and streamline it, especially since we have less time today, by instead of throwing everything against the wall.
So I would like us to start with the list that's been provided to us in our packet, particularly the recommendations from Sergeant Jordan and Jeremy Cleverly. And we have, Commissioner Folks will be our scribe. So as we identify the policies that we want to work on the next 2 years, Commissioner Folks is going to write them on these great big huge giant pieces of paper. As it gets to the point where we start deciding how much weight we give to them is when we will come up and start placing our stickers by the policies that we are identifying as the super important for these 2 years.
So my first proposal then is that we consider these all as a block and we put them on the work plan as a block item, and then leave it up to the chair to fit them into the schedule rather than.
That's a lot on your chair. Wow. Thanks for throwing that one right out there. Commissioner Rady.
Yeah, I noticed that, of the 2 pages, with the exception of the brand new and not yet finished, law enforcement, mental health and wellness policies, all the others, in the reasons why they're up, mention the age of the document, every
Yes,
single
those
one.
are the ones that Sergeant Jordan
Right,
and
I understand
Jared.
that. But in each one, they were, age was an issue as opposed to problems with the policy,
Correct.
Exactly.
primarily.
Exactly why I think they should be proposed as a block, because unless there's a problem, I think we should be focusing on things that are problems. And yes, we should hit these when we can, but if they haven't been problems, we trust. So.
Chief, how does the accredit that work?
Yeah.
How does that work as far as the age of the policies?
Well, the accreditation, the age of the policy would be an issue, first of all. So if it was one of the proofs, so accreditation looks at over 200 of the most critical policies that would be in a police department. So accreditation is not going to have ask us to address, some of these, like locker room. That's a great example. Yeah, stuff like that. So it's over 200 of the most critical, high liability, high risk policies. If it's out of date, then that becomes an issue. So we would have to update it. If case law has changed something, we would update that. We would update that policy and do that. And then more importantly, in accreditation, we have to show a proof of us following the policy. So we have to provide an email where somebody did something, or a body cam video where somebody did something. We have to actually provide the demonstration that we're actually following the policy. So we've been accredited every 3 years for the last 12 years. So when you think about these proofs, very few of those proofs are going to be out of date because we're revisiting them every 3 years. These are likely going to be policies that were not part of accreditation because of the age of them. Thank you.
Oh, hands. Who went up first?
I think Randy, Jack, thank you, and then Alan. My brain shuts off at this time of day.
Okay, Groves, Rady, Lyman, and me.
So Chief, I'm assuming probably a high priority for you would be high risk, low frequency events, like an edged weapon.
Those are, always the higher liability. So high risk, low frequency stuff is where most of our liability happens. However, high frequency, low risk stuff touches us, at every level, almost on a daily or weekly basis. So it's hard to answer that question.
All right.
Yeah, from a liability standpoint, I'd want to be rock solid in my higher liability stuff, but also good policy where people are exercising it every single day or every single week is really important too.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Rady.
My impression then is that a lot of our work on these 2 pages of policies is housekeeping, to update, to basically in many of them, there will not be a lot of controversial questions, we assume. And what we need to do is go through them, check them, make sure there's no language that needs tweaking, and update them if anything's come up. Would it be possible for staff to give us a prioritized list of what housekeeping you want cleaned out first and what later? We can get to all of it, because some of it will be quick and easy and some of it will be hard, but I don't know. I went through and I read I think 28 different policies this last week to get ready for this session. And it would be a help to us in scheduling these, have some notion of what is more urgent from your point of view and what less.
Well,
Is that possible?
Yeah, well, anything's possible. It just takes time and money, as they would say. I think you can get through a high volume of work, especially on the things that if part of what you want to do is make sure that we touch policies that are out of date. We can do that work together and we can prioritize, and there may not be a huge priority. We do a bucket of that. And you're right, there may be some of those where it's like, does this apply as profoundly today as it did 20 years ago? And if the answer is yes, then we can say, okay, are there any nuances and are there any contemporary nuances that we didn't think about 20 years ago when we wrote this that we need to think about today? Is there voices that weren't heard 20 years ago that should be heard today? And we can get through that. I think the key, the thing that I would ask the commission, in my experience with the commission, is there's always been certain things to individual commissioners that are kind of their projects. You know, mental health and wellness is a great example. Right? You've got a real passion for wanting to take that on and think about moving the direction of mental health and wellness. There's been others that come up. And then throughout the course of your time, and just because of the dynamic nature of the work we do, something just comes out of the blue and just like, we want to address that. So we're happy to prioritize things for you. We're happy to, if you want to put it in a bucket, that's just kind of a cleanup bucket and say, we're going to do this as a matter of cleanup. And you got a separate bucket that's more, you know, developing or adding to an existing policy that needs more, you know, discussion. I'm happy to do that. So however we can support you. So.
You know, when you say cleanup bucket, it reminds me of a statement that President Obama made one time at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and they asked him if he had a bucket list, and he said he didn't have a bucket list, but he's got a list that rhymes with bucket. Commissioner Lyman.
Thank you. I'm following up on Commissioner Shivers. I didn't come with like, I want to put on here the policy that governs EPD's ICE relationship.
Right.
I didn't put on here with the policy, I want to consider the feeding in the park or the homeless encampments. And
right.
You're absolutely correct. And we touched on this before you got here. We definitely do hit you up sometimes. Sometimes you're ambushed, sometimes not in the nicest, bestest way. And when things rise to the surface, this is the forum I was kind of venting before that's what's kind of missing from police commission for me personally, is that I want to be relevant. I want to respond to the community. I want to do, now I know the locker room, actually the locker room is an important one. Or a good example is DEI policies. What's EPD given the current climate, you know? So this list, it's important. I want to do it. I think Commissioner Shivers has a good kind of suggestion, which is like, we just work through as much of this as we can. And then with an acknowledgement on all of our part that it's our collective responsibility to bring things to the surface because it is dynamic and it's not static. And so that's where I think the usefulness and effectiveness and the, you know, the juice of this commission could come from. So.
Here's a good example of how maybe we might be able to support you in that. There's going to be things that I'm going to bring to you too. It's just not up to you guys to figure out what I need. That's up to me to bring to you and say, this is what I need. One of those things that's not going to be on your list yet, but that we're working on is we're working with a consultant around, whether you knew this or not, we hired our first transgender police officer in the history of the department. And he's at the academy now. And so we've brought in a consultant to help us draft policy around transgender officers in the workplace to include all the stuff. And we've got a really good consultant working with it. At some point when we're ready with the policy recommendation, I want to bring it to you and say, this is the work we've done. This is the consultant we've used. We're going to bring the consultant here. We're going to let Oblio talk to you about the work that he's doing and what he did with us, where he sees vulnerabilities, where we made improvements, all that kind of stuff, and have the police commission get their eyes on it. So there's going to be those things during the course of the year that are going to be important to the organization as well. So that will help. And you have to be kind of big space to be able to do that. May not be on your work plan today or as you walk out of here today, but it's going to be important work that you're going to want to memorialize and report out on when it's time to do so.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, to address issues like that, in the past, we put a sort of catch-all of emergent issues, which was really useful when the pandemic hit, and we needed to use that quite a lot. Yeah, pretty emergent. And then the second point that I was going to make is that in order to get accreditation, chief oversees policy. He signs it. We technically don't need to look at any of these. We should, and stops in particular is one that I've had my eye on every year. But to me, that's less of a concern than addressing some of these like known issues.
Right.
That's cool.
And I will say that, I think Commissioner Rady and I was on the same page as far as requesting policies 305 for immigration law, 300 for arrests, 411 trespass letter of consent. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And as far as what issues that are currently surfacing in the community right now and are very much in the public eye. And it's not necessarily that our policies necessarily need revisions by us as the commission, but I think we need to be familiar enough with the policies to be able to speak knowledgeably to the community that has a lot of questions about is EPD helping ICE? And when the Burrito Big Brigade and Black Thistle Street Aid are talking about what's happening with the encampments. So Vice Chair, you had made a suggestion, but I didn't hear a motion.
Yes. So I would move that we each submit 3 ideas for consideration for the table, in addition to these ones that we had laid out before us as the starting point.
In addition to.
Yeah, and then we can decide, because like some of these very much should receive their own agenda item, and then some of them are very small and can be lumped together. I mentioned stops before, but stops needs a meeting of its own because it's such a robust, element of what happens. But like aircraft accidents doesn't need a meeting of its own. So those smaller ones are set aside.
All right, Vice Chair has a motion on the table. There is a motion floating in the air.
Well, I made a motion, so we
Yeah.
can move.
So is there a second?
I'll second discussion.
Okay. Discussion. Commissioner Rady.
First thing that comes to my mind is I have brought 3 policy and 1 procedure questions for this meeting. And one of them's 402 stops. So how do we deal with issues that we wanted to bring and are already on this list? I wouldn't want it just to disappear into the bucket.
I would agree with that. I think my opinion on that is that we start with what's on the list. And we can add to it, but I would love to start with what's on the list because for one thing, it'll make it easier on our scribe.
When you're looking at stops, make sure you understand that policy 402 stops data mandated by the state, not police top stops.
I understand that. Okay, I was part of the lobby.
Because the term stops for us means a variety of different things,
I
stop and
understand.
frisk and all that.
Yeah, but this
This
one
is just-
specifically is all capital. Yeah, 402.
So with my suggestion, we would submit these 3 ideas.
Okay.
We would take all of the collective ideas and then including the ones that are already on here, we would vote then.
Okay.
And so if you did want one that's on here already, it wouldn't be put in the bucket, it'd be set aside as its own thing. But yeah, it would occur before voting, so.
Commissioner Folks.
When you say bucket, are you saying, so all of you are already in the bucket, but we're adding to our separate?
What we're adding to our suggestions to add to this list. And then afterwards, we vote on which ones we want to look at.
Okay.
And once we vote on what ones we want to look at, we pull the rest of these out, put them in a separate bucket, and then add that as a bucket in and of itself.
Like we had the parking lot and.
Yeah, so we're not getting rid of it.
Right.
We're just.
We want to emphasize them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now that there's been a motion and there's been discussion, now do we need to vote to accept that? Now that we have the understanding of that. Okay. Will you please restate your motion so that we know exactly what we're voting on?
Yeah, I motion that we all submit 3 ideas for additional things to go on the work plan, in addition to what is already in our.
I make it friendly. That it's an option.
Oh, yeah.
Or
Yeah,
a
yeah,
maximum of 3 or?
yeah, of course, yes.
Okay. All right. So all in favor of that motion and with the friendly amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. And are there any abstentions? All right. Looks like that one passed unanimously, Vice Chair. So we will start, actually, we'll just go around the room, and I'm gonna start with poor commissioner folks who just sat down.
Yeah, I'm staying seated for the moment.
Okay,
418 mental health crisis response, last updated 7/20/15. Complete language is in there, so just remembering that maybe up to date to now and time. So 418, a review of mental health. And I know that there's actually officers, well, no. I think there's now officers that are in the community with mental health engagement stuff. I probably misunderstood.
is 418
that.
the one that we just did?
Cool. Okay, then let's scrap that. I did have an idea about, I'll go with my. Absence from work was last updated in 1999. Didn't you read that, 217?
Do you have ideas of ones that are not on the list? Yeah, you don't have to.
I can go first since I'm the one.
Okay, Vice Chair.
The very first one that I'd like to add to the list is to give the auditor's office and or the CRB insight into the discipline outcomes. We talked about this before. I would love to add it to our agenda, put it on our work plan, and make it official as we, hold space for public comments, liaison with the various stakeholders and see how the community feels about the idea. And if, as I suspect, the CRB portion of that idea is dead in the water, but maybe the auditor portion.
So from Vice Chair Shivers, I have auditor visibility and discipline. What else do you have, Vice Chair Shivers?
So outreach into community safety payroll tax. So this would be outreach, specifically us going to various meetings and gathering community input. Rather than just saying we support the tax, we'd probably also have to have a meeting about whether we support the tax and what the tax has done. So it's kind of a bigger topic, but community safety payroll tax, various issues surrounding it would be the second thing that I.
Out of
added.
curiosity, do you see a subcommittee coming from that?
I really don't like subcommittees personally,
Okay.
because the commission as a whole needs to vote on it eventually anyway. But I'm not going to say no.
All right.
Number
3.
So I'm doing got more, but the creation of a yearly mental health checkup as potentially mandatory. And this is another conversation we've had with Union in the past, and we've got the peer support stuff going on now. But in support of officer mental health and wellness, I've heard a variety of proposals. One of which is that in order to get buy-in, we need a mental health yearly checkup the same way we have a physical checkup. And that way officers don't feel singled out because they choose to go to one and maybe it becomes habit forming that way.
Okay. So for Vice Chair Shivers, I have auditor visibility into discipline, outreach for community safety payroll tax, and annual mental health checkup. Okay. Commissioner Neal?
I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyman?
Maybe 10, 15 special teams and ad hoc programs, just to look at how that, because I saw a post today actually about that one of the units that I thought was not ad hoc was listed as it might have been the street crimes unit. It just triggered some curiosity on my part. 411 trespass letters. I'd kind of like, we heard from the chief that trespass is the #1 complaint. I'd kind of like to visit that issue. If we could take a look at it. And yeah, there's a policy 415 recording police activities that I'm curious about. So, thank you.
All right, so from Commissioner Lyman, I have 1015 for special teams and ad hoc units, 415 recording of police activities, and 411, which was on the list on page 30, 411 trespass letter of consent. Councilor Ye? Councilor Groves?
The only thing I was interested in, Alan already covered, and that's the 411 trespass letters.
Thank you. Commissioner Rady.
Yeah. 305 immigration laws, and this one, I cannot emphasize the urgency of enough. I would love to bring something tonight about this because I think it's that urgent. But stops 402 and pain holds 808. That's not the full name of the section. I believe it also deals with another topic, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. And there's a procedure that was brought to us by a member of the public last meeting, which is procedure 3.4 on sexual assault. I read that thing carefully and had some discussions and have a few, not a lot, but one or two tweaks that I think could usefully be added.
So for Commissioner Rady, the added item to
305 immigration, 402 stops, 808 pain holds.
and 808 is the one that was not already on the list. Is that
Correct.
correct? Thank you. I honestly thought we were only working off of the list. So for myself, for Chair Hawkins, I have the 305 immigration law and the 411 trespass letter of consent and 3.4 procedure 3.4 sexual assault. And Chief, one thing to put in your back pocket, not to address immediately, but one of the questions that came up from public comment this evening is the process of reporting sexual assault and whether it is a state mandate that has to be done in person, or if there's an option of doing it via proxy or online or via telephone. And that question came up while we didn't have anybody to say where that rule came from. They had attempted to report that and they were deterred, I believe, by the lack of options. Commissioner Folks.
Let me try this again.
Okay.
Been mentioned, but adding on top of engagement, not only community engagement, but maybe engagement with potential candidates. So when you have EPD has the, I'm going to say Saturday sessions where they're informational for potential officers, maybe being present and tabling some of those events to explain to potential future officers or folks who choose not to go that path.
Interesting. Anything else?
I'm still learning, so thank you for your patience.
Of course.
So Chair, my understanding is you can speak on behalf of the commission. Do we have materials or pamphlets for the commission to be able to share openly with folks that is very fact-based and kind of stays on point with the scope of the commission?
We have a trifold brochure about the police commission. It's not terribly engaging, or I'm sorry, I know there a lot of work went into doing it. It
By commission members. By the way.
Yes,
It
I
wasn't
know.
staff.
To Commissioner Rady's point, nobody asks us for a brochure when we're tabling at events. They always want the whistle. So yes, we do have print material.
And that's all.
Okay, so for Commissioner Folks, I have her added weight to the suggestion from Vice Chair Shivers for outreach for community safety payroll tax and possible participation in events with candidates and recruits. Chief, just quick question. Is recruit and candidate the same thing, or is that, or is there any point from which one moves to the other?
A recruit is somebody that is officially hired by the city, and a candidate is in process. So, yeah.
Commissioner Folks, does that change your terminology at all?
Yes, what would you call somebody who's just interested in
A candidate.
a candidate? Thank you.
Okay.
We might be recruiting for them, but being a police recruit means you're a young police officer. That was most recent.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, so candidate events. Thank you, Commissioner Folks. You know, my dad says that he applied at EPD and was told he was too short. And my dad's about 5'6". So, Chief, my dad turned 85 today. I'm gonna need you to go ahead and hire him on.
We're gonna make him an honorary member. I'll get him a badge.
Okay. Vice Chair Shivers, what do we do now? Is this now when we move to the big papers that we get to put stickers on?
Go to the big papers or we can just make it.
Okay, so are we gonna have an opportunity to talk about any of these? Like, I feel like last year we had an opportunity to talk about things so we knew what we were supposed to.
Yes. That's kind of why I would like to get them on the big pages so we can all see them.
Okay, but no, not see them, like I can read them, like I have questions about it.
Okay.
Determining whether it's important or not, kind of situation, right? I only get to vote for 10, I want to make my 10 work, right?
Vice Chair?
I think we can just talk.
All right.
Can I ask for clarity based on your prior motion? Now I'm a little bit confused. Like where the motion stands is all of this is nothing's getting cast aside, and many of these that are minor could come up in the court if we adopt them as a bucket or however we phrase it. They'll come up in the course of when there's time in an agenda to put one of these on. You,
Right.
council, are asking for like the ones that are gonna make our,
Yeah.
we want to examine these, that like we want to examine these.
Well, no, I mean, like, I hate to say this, but our track record, we have not gotten through as much in these last couple of years than in past police
Okay.
commission years.
All right,
So I know that we're not gonna get to all of these, right?
right.
So if there are ones that are more important to us, I wanna front
So
load
to
them.
Councilor Ye's point, and I'm gonna start this off. Absence of work from work, that's a me issue, not a you issue. Right? I mean, that's like, I don't think the police commission needs to be weighing in on whether my policy on how I determine whether somebody was or wasn't absent from work and what the discipline happens for them is a huge issue for this community. It needs to be revised, obviously. It's 1999, but I would say that is not, don't waste your time on that. That's what you pay me to do, is make sure that I'm holding my people accountable and I define what an absence from work is, whether justified or unjustified. Those types of things. Another great example is attempt to locate. That is something that is with our lead system is purely clerical for us to make sure that we are putting in the attempt to locate correctly. You guys don't need to make sure that that's happening. That's just those types of things. So to your point, Councilor, there are some things on here that I think you can get a little bit more focused on and other things that.
That was what I was asking
Yeah.
for, was some kind of priority.
These are just on here for the sake of being existing policies that are really, really old. All of which need to be revised, some of which you don't need to see. And just trust that we'll get them updated and revised.
Can you just go through and tell us which ones?
Well, I'll try my best. I would say 217 would come off, it would not stay on our plate to do, but would come off the commission's plate to work. I think non-criminal detox is worth talking about because it does have a strong community component to it. Attempt to locate would come off. And if I can do this differently, that's more efficient, let me know.
Just going through and telling us which ones come off. is
Okay,
probably-
okay, I would say, okay, absence of work from work comes off. Attempt to locate comes off. I'm not sure you guys care about how we respond to aircraft accidents, quite frankly, so I would say that. comes
Honestly,
off.
I just want you to respond.
Yeah, exactly. Get that. I think FTEP is worth staying on just because I think the way we're training our officers and understanding that there may not be a lot of work there, but I think from an educational perspective, I think it could be. That state 702 stays on, would stay on, 703 stay on, flight 806 would stay on, spit hoods would stay on. These are community, I see community impact on these. Edged weapons, would stay on. Let's see, I'm just talking out loud, sorry.
Unintentional discharge.
Unintentional discharge. When we have an unintentional or negligent discharge, I'm not sure the police commission has much to say on that other than the fact that don't do it, and we're holding people accountable when it happens. We're trying to, it's more of a risk perspective than it is that. So I'd say 815 comes off. 908, 908A is going to stay. Let's see. That stays on. MDC, I would say, would come off.
Didn't we just approve the drones one?
We had a
Yeah,
presentation,
good presentation.
And then,
but we didn't, because of the anticipated
But,
legislation.
but the new legislation is gonna prompt some stuff that you guys want to talk about. MDC 1201 would come off.
What is MDC?
Mobile data computer,
Oh,
which
okay.
is, you guys don't care as long as we're using it correctly.
Not doing what we got.
Yeah. I'm gonna leave audio video on because I'm not sure. Locker, I don't know what locker room that, maybe that should stay on and that we'll bundle that with the stuff I'm gonna bring you when we do our some of our updating on our transgender stuff. So that would stay on. And then, of course, law enforcement, mental health and wellness policies would stay on. Procedures, which are different than policies. You know, you could just leave the rest of that on, because I think you're gonna be interested in that.
that's really helpful.
And then on the back page,
This is the community safety payroll tax stuff. that
oh,
we're
this is
doing.
the,
Yeah.
this is the CFPT
Mhm.
stuff, so you can just, yeah, I mean, you can leave that in its own bucket, and you can just do that. So if that's helpful at all. So the other thing I would say as you're thinking about what you're doing is there's a couple of things that just to be mindful of. Anything that's gonna require state law changes makes it tough to feel like you can be effective. I don't mind anything that potentially triggers a demand to bargain with the union. If it's the right thing, then I'll bargain it and see where we get, but don't have any expectations of success. But just give me the rationale to bargain it on our behalf. And then the third bucket of that is anything that you do policy wise that might generate the need to expend revenue that we don't have is gonna be tough right now. So, those would be the three things that just to try and do my.
You want to write them all down, or do you want us to just write what we want on the stickers and put them in the tabular format that way? Yeah, you have much better stickers than I had last time. So.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is this a 2-year work plan?
Yes.
Do you not feel like you can do all of this in 2 years?
Have you met
I
us?
think we can.
So-
I think we can.
Better.
If
Yeah.
we don't have,
Do better.
don't get distracted by guardian cameras.
When I was chair and everybody was trapped in their houses.
So we got derailed quite a bit the last work plan with guardian trailers, women in policing. And a lot of the stuff with the mental health and wellness, and of course, we had a very unfortunate death as well. So we did get distracted a lot, and also some of the things that we put on the work plan, we didn't necessarily have the knowledge to be able to do anything with them. It's what I have found building agendas with Vice Chair Shivers is that it's actually very challenging to have even more than 2 or 3 to cover in one meeting. Things that appear to be slam dunk to me sometimes will be exactly what another commissioner will want to sink their teeth into. For example, guardian trailers. The Scott Lemons policy that you promised was going to be named after him. Yes.
So it sounds like locker rooms, 1205, law enforcement, mental health, those will automatically go to our agenda. So we don't, oh, right, and the drones, so we don't need to vote on those because they're coming back automatically. And I'm wondering if this 416, it says CPD procedures related to this is set for June 2025 meeting. Does that mean we're gonna do 416 in June?
Yes, because that was on, so June 2025 is the end of our previous work plan. So yes, that was. Good point.
So I'm wondering, is there anything else on here that is already preset, so we should not bother?
I just want to add to that, we may not get to it in June because we've got officer elections. We have to probably finalize the work plan, and then we also need to talk about a report to council. So we may not have time. Just saying.
Yes.
So it
Also,
may-
things like that
yeah,
derail us.
Yes, yes, stuff
And
come
my
up.
last question is, can we combine, should it get enough votes? Procedure 3.4 sexual assault with procedure 517 appendix to sexual assault response team?
I think that makes perfect sense. So Holly or Vice Chair, I know last time we worked very hard to identify the top 10 and then the parking lot items and then the wouldn't it be nice ifs. So at this point, do we have enough? You guide me, please. You've done this more.
We would be voting just on the top 10, and then everything else would go into the parking lot automatically.
That's a lot of parking lot.
But it may just sit there collecting pigeon manure.
That's also the beauty of putting it under a bucket item, a single item that says these recommendations.
So one thing that was nice about having the 3 levels of priority for the previous work plan was that there were times when we were not able to address anything in that top 10 due to timing of things. And so we were able to pull things from the parking lot without necessarily having to waste time. And it wouldn't be a waste of time, but given the constrictions that we have, without necessarily diving into the ones that we had identified as really not super high priority for us.
What we could do is, once we all vote, there's probably gonna be a pretty natural cutoff point, where stuff that, last time it was 4 votes, stuff that got 4 votes fell within the top 10, stuff that got 3 votes or less fell into the parking lot, and then everything else in that was that third category. We talked about it.
Okay.
Might I also say, not to complicate this, is as I administer this organization, I'm likely, if I need to do something, I'm likely not gonna wait for this commission to get around to doing it. If I need to do it. So if there's something that's super old that I need to pick off, I'm not gonna wait. Probably, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. And then I'll let you know. We'll maybe put it on and say, hey, Allison has updated this. This is what it looks like. It may not need anything other than just a quick consent agenda type of look to it. But I don't want to get into a space where we can't do anything until you guys get to it type of environment.
Please. At some point, we're gonna talk about the process longer than it would take to bang out one of these things. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think we just start at the top and work our way down. We're gonna get through this in 2 years. If we don't, we can have another workshop and just get it done.
Well,
Commissioner
my,
Lyman?
my response to that is rather than go from the top in the random order or the order numerically by policy, that we set some priorities as to an agenda that we would like to work through
All right.
rather than.
I just, starting at the top, you get the oldest one, you got 193.
And I think whoever ends up being chair will probably prioritize whatever's oldest and most imminent in terms of going to move by team.
So I have a question on the outreach for CSPT. This one looks a little bit tricky to me, rather like law enforcement, mental health and wellness did when we did our first one, because I don't necessarily know if we have a measure of success. So for example, annual mental health checkup, we know if we've gotten there. We know when we can check that one off. If either we get it passed or the chief says absolutely no, sir, no way, don't count. Outreach for CSPT, I'm not sure how we measure success on that.
Last time around, we essentially had an agenda item right next to or as part of commissioner comments was like, talk about what organizations you've done outreach with.
Okay.
We asked the city staff to provide a list of neighborhood organizations and community groups that the chair and vice chair at the time then went out and visited personally.
So does that make it a work plan item or a standing agenda item?
Well, let's put it on the agenda. Should we put-
Just checking in here at 7:15.
Yes. All right. Vice Chair, what is your current recommendation with the stickers? I printed these out. You know how hard it took and how hard it was getting them.
Yeah, I think everybody should write down what they're voting for on the sticker, and then we maybe set aside butcher paper.
Okay.
And, you tabulate them, or I will tabulate them since I don't want to volunteer you for stuff.
Well, I already volunteered, Commissioner Folks.
Okay, perfect.
I'm excited to use that pen.
It's so easy to make her happy. Just give her a nice pen or let her shoot one of the officers in training. Okay. So one policy per sticker, right? And then we'd give them over to Commissioner Folks. Okay, Commissioner Folks?
There were a couple that were mentioned, I don't have them in front of me. 808. 415.
808 is paying hold.
Chief.
415 is recording the police.
Chief, do you have any explanation of either of those?
Paying hold would probably be 800 is our use of force policy sequence, and it's probably pain compliance.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
It's a combined item. There's pain compliance and either handcuffs or something else like probably under the same policy.
What was the other one? 415, recording the police?
Yeah.
I don't know, probably, I don't know, but I'm guessing it's a policy that lets us know that people can report us. We don't have an expectation of privacy, let's put it.
Yeah. That was one of the ones I read.
Yeah. As a reminder, you can vote for the same thing multiple times. Up to
I have to say that having read 28 of the policies, and I looked for the ones that might interest me that were less administrative and more action oriented, and I found the language to be, because I only found 3 that I really wanted to
dig
kick
into.
some sand about, yeah.
It's a little
And
bit-
some of them are minor. I mean, the pain compliance is just one line in there I don't like.
Okay.
I have a question for you, Chief.
Sure.
411, trespass letter of consent.
Mhm.
That seems like an oxymoron in my head.
That's
What is-
fair.
what is that?
This is our trespass letter of consent is basically a letter of trespass filled out by a property owner that gives us the authority to trespass people from their property without them having to be physically there. So if I'm a business owner and somebody is sleeping in my vestibule, then I have a trespass letter on file. It gives us the legal authority to go that person and say, "Hey, you trespassing like you." Yeah,
the consent is.
yeah, consent giving us
How we can
consent.
trust.
Yeah, police can trespass on behalf of the law. Yeah.
This says that it was updated this year.
It's gonna be pretty up to date.
We did not review that policy, right? We talked about it.
Yeah, probably not. That would have been one of those things that was such an emergent issue. Part of it is for us is always moving based on what our prosecutor deems as needed to successfully prosecute the case. So like, for instance,
No, I'm not sure about it.
there'll be a trespass letter and maybe some complimentary language in there around also signage, that type of stuff. I mean, we can take a look at it, just may not be a heavy lift. But if nothing else, it's a chance to look at that policy because it is so pervasive in our community that your time spending looking at it educates you enough that you can speak really intelligently to it if asked. You know, why is EPD able to go and do X? You can say, well, actually, I know this because there's a trespass letter of consent on file.
Don't go from stone. You can see how reading.
It's good. It's like partial and cursive.
Electoral irregularity.
No. That's how I think of my own.
Well, it's gonna-
Yeah.
it's gonna-
Function.
Parish can reschedule your one-on-one with the mayor on May 28th, or the next one is June 4th.
Right, yeah.
But in spirit, we just
You
come
know
back
that
from.
explanation from the city about why we got, we just put on the
You
candidates?
can do it on the 28th. I'm only holding this open just because I think I'm driving back.
They actually convene a citizen panel. It's a stakeholder panel. They don't create a subcommittee within their own board.
They set up.
Because I've got a
panel of outside people, they don't do it themselves.
You want us to.
But the auditor itself put together a community panel, which will then pass on to screen.
This is just a
the written
so
application.
I'll just tell them, just tell them like, I'm gonna go.
So
I'm gonna go to.
that was worded a little bit.
Yeah, it's absolutely,
This is what they were.
what they told me to my face.
That's great.
Oh, yeah, we're updating this to its goal. And
Just
because we,
those little boys.
we want
that's my
everything to
baby,
be,
that's him now.
up to date. We're gonna go back to what. We've done it the way for 20 years.
I didn't know. And the bottom line is, we don't want to hear from y'all.
Yeah,
Thank you for your input.
which like, if,
It's dumb, because they can take the input
and
put
ignore it.
it there, and they showed us respect, and maybe they got something out of it, maybe they ignored it completely. Either way, it was, the procedure at least was democratic, and this is, we don't have a say, we just have a recommendation, we have a voice.
She's loving it, so she.
Right now, the only way.
And then
for us to
she's
get a
on her way
voice,
tomorrow.
Once the mayor recommends the people, we can go to city council. and give testimony. It's not like.
So it's just basketball. Now, flag thing is over, it's just.
Andy first responded quick.
She did, but she doesn't.
Close proximity to the garbage.
Or and flag.
Well, I think,
Yeah, what is
HRC.
Although I probably.
I don't think
Well, when
they.
back in, like, during football season.
I don't think,
Like one game, like juniors versus.
I'm not sure
seniors,
exactly why
it's
this
happening.
is happening now.
Um,
I think it's some combination of,
It's a full season.
the last time the police commission made these recommendations,
It's fun.
Lucy did end up just re-interviewing everybody. and taking notes.
Over there, keep this.
Which, you know, it's perfectly within her right, but some of the people who were involved in that interview process. weren't happy about it.
Right.
I understand the city's instincts to not expose themselves to. But
You don't want to set an unrealistic expectations. If the mayor is not going to use or, I mean, nobody likes to be asked for their opinion and if it's not actually wanted.
Well, those interview things,
But-
I did it for CRP, it's a lot of work.
Mhm.
yeah, and the other problem though is that next time we get a George Floyd and you get 100 applications, we're gonna have a commission that doesn't know how to conduct interviews, and it's gonna be a mess.
Well, I mean, the other option is that we, send a letter to council that we disagree with that decision and we're asking for this.
Yeah, as our liaison, well, the commission hasn't taken that stance.
Yeah,
Um, but-
If they did, then.
Maybe that should go on our work plan.
But I think the HRC, I think they read the application, they do need the people. I don't think they do, but they.
I don't think they do.
They do send us a writing.
They did, because they interviewed my husband when he got out.
Oh, okay. The HRC is a little weird though, it's different than, well, it's set up different. Weird is not the right word. I use, yeah. I called something coddling today, which is probably not the best word.
You called it what?
Coddling.
Coddling?
Basically explaining support and I use the word, I've had it long too. Only staff. I was not talking about them. I was like.
Sometimes.
You mean you weren't talking about?
You could be a police chief.
I didn't care.
If you coddle, you could be a police chief.
My brain shuts off after 7. So, you're in good company.
Lots of events. It's the summer.
What demographic data does STOPS collect?
Demographic. It'll collect,
Perceived race.
I was gonna say, isn't that the?
it's perceived race, which is, this is where the stops data irritates me. You get jammed up either way.
Yeah.
They want you to guess what somebody's race is. And then when we choose not to guess, we get jammed up for not making those assumptions, so. But yeah, it basically, obviously, in there'll be an age because we know that age, gender.
Does it collect their language or their citizen status?
No language, no citizen status, and it's just a other demographic, age, gender. That's the other thing, it wants to assume gender too. It wants to assume gender.
What could go wrong?
I think the intent is solid, it's just the way they're asking us to do it.
Mhm.
There's just a lot of error.
Did not mean to bump your hair.
But the more important piece is the outcome stuff, like, so what you wanna do is you wanna find out if you're disproportionately
Mhm.
arresting or writing citations to a certain group.
And who is?
And then of course the officers attach that, so you find out who it is, and so.
That's the part.
So that's the thing, is I'm more interested in that, like, are we disproportionately stopping and or citing or arresting a certain demographic? And if we are, if they raise it as an issue and the state CJC tells us if there's an issue or not, then we have the data to figure out who, if it's concentrated to a certain officer.
Take a look, chief, at the driving while suspended stops that don't require probable cause for bad driving. Because to me, that's always been that's where you can really see if there's bias happening on stops that for traffic where there's no traffic.
Well, and the legislative changes over the last few years have taken a lot of those things, like equipment violations aren't even on the table. That was the big one. In my day, when I was operational, if you had somebody that wanted to target a certain group, equipment violations was high on the list. You know, no license plate. You can make those stops all day long, and those are all off the table.
But
So,
the computer says the driver's suspended and the description is reasonably matching.
oh, you mean the registered owner?
Yeah, the RO, exactly.
Yeah, you run the plate, the RO, you run the RO, they're suspended.
And it's a female, you
Yeah.
know, and you stop.
Yeah.
My problem with the stop data is two. The first one is that there's like a 5% margin of error, which statistically you need. But also we have less than 5% Black people in our community. So the margin of error is not enough to cover things that I would consider.
Yeah, but you have
The
to.
last
assume
data-
the mistakes are getting made in certain areas, right? Folks who are biracial or folks who might, they're just, it's hard for someone to put them into a category, right?
We can't ask your race,
Right.
but then it wants us to, first, they want us to guess what your race is.
Well, they want to know, are you acting a certain way because you perceived someone to be a certain race? It doesn't matter what their race is, it's your action based on your perception.
Right.
So even if you got 100% of them wrong, right? If you're
You're still
doing,
biased.
yeah, if it shows that every time you pull over a person who can give a certain way and do the same thing, we've identified a problem, whether that's actually there.
What is the last year you have data for from the state for stops in Eugene?
It does every year.
The last I could find online was 2023. And what it stated was, it was acceptable, the level. But the level for African Americans was 3 times that of their percentage in the population. And the state stated that is acceptable. And you told me that is not acceptable. And
it's a tough one to do because it's based on census data, right? The demographic is based on census data. And
which is 10 years.
But my point is that, and I can tell you anecdotally,
Civil was very concerned.
we got a lot of
about,
problems driving with our
So that
student athletes.
other part that I found.
We spend a lot of time with student athletes.
Okay.
They're not gonna show up on the census data, likely. But we have,
Okay.
you know, in and around the university, we have, let me put it this way, Jack. When Dan Lanning asks me to come talk to this time every year, the number one issue I have to talk to them about is
Not. You were getting at it.
because we stop a lot of speeding on
Yeah, yeah.
MLK and a lot of that kind of stuff. So I think that's one of the challenges.
Okay,
with the
that's
data.
very helpful.
Yeah.
when you get the report from the state, and as I remember, the legislation was that each officer is identified, as well as, I mean, you can say each person in the department who's issued citations, what their percentage of different parts of the population are. So it should be possible, just looking at that general data, to see, do we have any officers who stand up, on the chart, and all the others are down here, or is it all, happening about the same level? Who in the department looks at that?
Then the problem, if you do it that way, like who's assigned to which shifts where, because the city isn't. So somebody might have hired their peers.
Okay, but that would be the starting point. If you see someone standing up on that, you go, okay, we need to take a look at these stops.
It's my,
How is he doing?
It's my,
Okay.
it's my understanding, is that when we have about a 98-99% compliance rate. Of entering our stops data, and this is stops data, this is person stops, traffic stops. And the outcomes, and then they ask us to guess all the information. Is that the CJC does that information, and then we get a report from them.
Right.
Giving us, we get an overall report card, but then we also get a report from them saying, hey, you might want to look at X or Y or Z and do that.
But you don't get the actual raw data?
Oh, we can have access to the raw data.
So you could look at,
If we want it, but we don't have access. I couldn't go to the office and say, I need to pull up my stops data. All of that's housed at the state. We input it and all gets sent to the state.
so there's no way for you to,
Not without requesting. Not without requesting.
have you
So
ever requested?
I've never had a need to,
How would you know?
because the CJC, that's what they're.
Because I
their job
haven't
is to
pointed
tell me-
out and said you got a problem.
Their job is to tell me where I have a problem. That's my understanding.
Okay, well, this is really helpful.
Yeah, I mean,
This
it's
gives
just,
us a basis
and
for
I would suggest to you, because we do this same work around use of force internally.
Yeah.
We have all of our use
Yeah,
of
yeah,
force data, and we have that, so we always are.
discussion. You
looking-
see if someone is,
We're always looking to see if we have an officer that is unusually high compared to the comparative officers. We do that with use of force and display of force. But we don't own the data, the state does in this particular case.
I think it's good anyway, because.
We input it and it gets sent to the cloud and they do all of the data crunching.
okay, we'll have a
So-
discussion around this. This
Is
is
the veil of night still a policy? Is that still part of stops?
That's part of their analysis, is the veil of night time as a consideration for.
Yeah.
Title from.
Yeah, I think it's improved since when I started, they like stopped collecting data during the night, which I thought was problematic. Now they just statistically factor it in.
We try to normalize it with the understanding that in low visibility situations that there's some issues with that. So.
Y'all looking at you?
Okay.
When in doubt, it's
Chief,
recorded.
I have a totally unrelated question for you. Is it common in other states for police to be able to talk to minors without a parent or guardian? 'Cause I understand it's common. In Oregon, you can do that, right?
You can, I mean, it's case specific. It's case specific, so depending on depending on the reason why you want to talk to them, then
Right.
that it's dependent.
So when would you not be able to do it alone?
You're gonna put me on the spot.
That's okay. I don't know as an example.
We've had some recent legislation around being untruthful to minors in the course of investigation. See, we have the ability to lie to you. as we're
Yes,
investigating.
I'm well aware.
To get a confession.
Makes you
out of
very
it.
uncomfortable.
I know.
just
We,
so
we
you
can,
know.
we can fabricate something like, so-and-so already told me, so you might as well tell me when so-and-so didn't say anything. I mean,
Yeah.
there's still that. But they put some prohibitions, when dealing with minors on that kind of stuff. So right off the top of my head, I'm not gonna, right off the top of my head, I'm not gonna know like the specifics. I think like for instance, if we were called to a shoplift and the minor is being detained by the store clerk and we show up shoplift and we can't not talk to the minor until the parent. if we're conducting I think if it's a certain level of investigation, usually this is connected with the school system, then there is parent or guardian notification. Because the question becomes, can the parent invoke? I don't know, the judge would be able to vote. Can a parent invoke the right to remain silent on behalf of their? And I would say yes. My child's not gonna talk.
Yeah, my child wants to lower it.
Yeah. So, but I can find out. Why, did you have an experience that?
I did have an experience. Are we even recorded? Are we online right now? So yeah, no, this has been a while, but, and I will not explain it on TV. But, and then, not me personally, but a child that I know. And, but recently I was watching something and, they, it was another state and they were lying to the child. And I was like, well, and it just made me think, like, how would that work out here? Because it seems very uncool.
We got specific language around, untruthfulness with mine.
Yeah.
Okay,
Adults are fair game.
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but I get it to a certain extent.
So Commissioner folks, probably very hopefully you provided the stickers. Rather than reading off to you what everything got, it looks like 402 stopped, got the most, actually no, 305 immigration got the most at 12, followed by 402 stops at 9. And I think the next one after that was, we had a couple that had 6, one with 3.6 stalking incidents. And 411 trespass litter. 517 got 5, that's the sexual assault response team and appendix A, and 3.4 got 4. I think we can combine those together to make it 9 and make it very heavy on our work plan. The ones that Vice Chair Shivers added on for auditor discipline outcomes, CSPT and mental health annual checkup.
Oh, we got less than 3, right?
Yes. So.
Should we just make a motion to approve them as they rank?
Yeah. I think that's the best way to go. So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Sean, I think we can move the auditor visibility to the city council.
That's a good point.
It's really not our.
And to the
All right.
chair.
so the motion is on the table. It's been made and seconded to accept the work plan with the weighting as has been assigned by the stickers we all put on the policies that were recommended. So all in favor of accepting our work plan on those 5 great big pieces of paper, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? We have none. Folks, we have a work plan for 2 years. I'm actually super impressed because I feel like this went a lot easier than it did last time, but maybe just because maybe there's fewer of us. I don't know.
I do have
Turns
a
out if you
question.
set a meeting for 5 hours, it'll take 5 hours. If you set it for 4, it'll take 4.
True. Yes, Holly.
So of those that came out maybe with the same priority, how do you want to rank those?
So I think there were 2 that had 6s and there were,
So sexual assault and response team A had 9 as well as 402 stops. So both of those had 9s. How do you want to have a tiebreaker? Because honestly, we didn't do that with the.
We just put them in order.
The top 2 are gonna get to them.
Yeah.
And then the 2 6s that we had were the stalking incidents and the trespass letter.
The bigger issues are the ones that are.
Yeah, it's like,
Right.
And for those, I say we just rank them in the parking lot.
Yep.
Other than the amount of votes.
and you know what's actually really nice about this work plan is that every single one of this is tied to an actual policy, which will make it much easier setting agendas and trying to give reports.
So my question is, when I go to write your work plan for city council, because we're going to be asking for their consent, on these that are going to be in the bucket, Are we gonna have, we're gonna have to outline every one of those?
Oh, well, what do you mean? In the bucket?
Yeah, are we just gonna have a bucket and then?
Yeah,
in
let's
that-
make that the priority 3, I guess, like we had in the
Okay.
previous one.
Okay,
The first motion for the ones on here that didn't receive any votes, is that what you're asking?
yes,
So for those, I would just say, and others recommended by.
Are you trying to allows or something?
Yeah,
That list
I-
came from EPD.
yeah,
Yeah.
recommendations from EPD policy office.
Vice Chair, do
Sure.
we need to vote to hold space for emergent issues, or do we just include that as a matter of course?
We have traditionally just included it as a matter of course, technically, I did it wrong when we did that, so, we should probably vote to add emergent issues.
That will come
Yes.
up in the next
So
2
moved.
years. Moved, seconded, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? No abstentions. All right.
I do have a question about this bucket, because some of these were submitted by recommendation. EB policy, and then there's a full list that is added by police commission based on events of public interest. Not all of those made it onto this list, so are those also part of the bucket that might come on? Or are they
Yes.
emergent issues that we will bring up?
They are in the bucket right now, and if they are resurfaced, then they certainly move into emergent issues. All right.
I just wouldn't label them as the same. I wouldn't label them as
That's a good
policy
point.
review recommendations from the policy. I guess that's what,
Yeah,
the
label them.
nuance of that, I think. Yeah, they're separated on our sheet, but they should remain separated. I think on the,
So
or,
we'd have. So we'd have 3 different things at the end for the ones who didn't receive any votes that are in here. One would be recommendations from EPD policy office. One would be added by police commission based on recent events and public interest. And, oh, I guess just the 2 of them. So 2 separate buckets.
Just the distinction that the ones that we self-generated didn't come from EPD and shouldn't appear under the banner of EPD recommendation.
Actually, I like that distinction. That'll make that easier to explain to city council. All right. We can go into closing comments, and this time we're gonna go in reverse alphabetical order. So I'm gonna start with Counselor Ye.
I thought this went pretty well, and so I'm really glad to have done this with all of you.
Oh, and I forgot to, because I forgot liaison in comments, liaison reports in this, city council. Can you provide us an update on the new auditor?
Oh,
Since Chief kicked that one over to you.
I'll give you an update. We're doing background. right
yeah,
now.
I think
We're in the middle of background.
Yeah.
With the auditor, I met with him via Teams meeting last week, Craig. I think, council is gonna be having a discussion on the 12th of May. With a recommendation, and give authority to start, salary negotiations. Is that okay?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So we got one pick.
Yes, we,
Yeah.
we sent 2 a background, but one of them can't work in this country, immigration issues.
do you mind saying where they're from?
I know, they wanted to move here.
51st.
Right?
Governor.
In terms of immigration issues, sorry.
If we incorporate
Hi.
Washington,
I
California, and
just-
Oregon into Canada, they'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
I
it
come
was
to
maybe just that the job wasn't like.
It doesn't mean
has
that
to be-
that is further,
yeah.
whatever.
I think there were some issues around, he wanted to do a lot of it remotely from Canada.
Oh, is that
Oh,
right?
that-
Oh,
We didn't hear that.
no.
Yeah, I think there was part of that.
Yeah.
There's part of that. Part of that.
I can understand his
I was
motivation.
about to say, I would too.
The single candidate we have, is from the Los Angeles area, working in this space in Los Angeles County. Has got some different types of experience. He's more akin to specifically working in like professional standards, but more like an administrative law judge where he's quality control and checking and making decisions after recommendations. So it's not same work, but he's got some good exposure to misconduct, police misconduct, what it is. Former prosecutor, so he's got a law degree, former prosecutor, been working in the accountability world for a while.
And doesn't he do this for both LAPD and LCSO?
I don't know the answer to that, Councilor Groves. I know that he does it for LA County for sure. I don't know if LAPD falls under his purview or not. And maybe by virtue of it, LA being in LA County, he does. I just, when I heard he works for LA County, because they have a completely separate
Right.
sheriff's office.
Right.
So I don't know, might be both.
And I might just remember things that didn't happen, but I thought that was part of this
It very well be.
description.
Seems like a very nice gentleman and somebody that I think I can work with well.
Vice Chair Shivers.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming here. I like this space and I thought it went well.
Commissioner Rady.
Oh, I get it. It was great meeting. I mean, I'm real pleased with this. But there is something that we will be discussing in the future. I think I have to bring up tonight. And that would be, I would like to bring to this commission the question of Eugene Police cooperation with ICE, not charging anybody with having done so. Not just in regard to not turning over people to ICE, but in terms of if kidnappers come to our community to take people out without due process, that is a felony, that is a violent felony, and if neighbors choose to prevent that by blocking these armed felons, I would hope we can agree on a policy that the Eugene Police will not be available for backup for the kidnappers. Because while the people blocking them will be committing a crime, a misdemeanor, disorderly conduct, the people they are stopping are committing a violent felony. So I will be bringing that here, just so you're warned. I know it will make some people exceedingly unhappy, including the city attorney. But nonetheless, I think it needs to be that.
All right, well, thank you for the warning. Commissioner Neal.
Yeah, I thought that was efficient.
Commissioner Lyman.
Chair, thank you for the leadership. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for your leadership. Holly, thank you. Thank you for your hard work and making us all comfortable. And thank you for commissioners. Good meeting. Thank you.
The last and only other retreat I've been to, I don't think we finished everything that was on our agenda because we ended up having to have 2 meetings about the bylaws afterwards that we were going to be knocking out during that work retreat. So I'm very impressed with how well everyone has come together and been motivated to work swiftly and effectively. And Holly, as always, you are the hostess with the mostest.
Thank you.
You make it happen. You make it look easy, even though I know it wasn't, because I saw how many times that door locked every time you ran out to your car to grab another box.
Well, I appreciate your help too. So thank you.
And Chief Skinner, thank you for spending the evening with us. There were probably things, but more fun things to do. But also, next month, when we meet in June, we will be holding elections for chair and vice chair. I do plan to run for chair again for another term. If anyone is interested in running for chair or vice chair, please let Holly know. It doesn't even have to be in advance. You can just throw your hat in the ring in the middle of the conversation. It's happened. So that seat is certainly, I mean, technically speaking, I guess both the seats are open, but I intend to fight for mine. Councilor Groves.
And also, Sean, thank you for your leadership on the commission. Likewise, Holly, thank you for all the work that you do, and Chief, appreciate your leadership for the organization as well. I think tonight this afternoon, this evening went very well. I think it's a functional group from what I'm seeing, and I think we covered a lot of ground, and that's a good thing. I guess I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Commissioner Folks.
Thank you all for thank you 312.
making it happen, especially Colin and Chief for spending so much time with us. It's been a delight, and I'd like to throw my hat in the ring for vice chair.
Noted.
No,
Chief, do you have anything you would like to say?
no, I'm looking forward to the spirited conversation with Mr. Bailey.
I've got a few comments too.
All right, folks, we are adjourned 10 minutes early again.